Hello and welcome everybody. This is DH Thorne. Hopefully the audio is working good. Hopefully the video is working good. I am joined tonight by my good friend, associate, compadre, weirdo in crime, nerd, max level extraordinaire, D&D fanatic, and all around nice guy, Eddie. And my sound person told me that the sound sounds great. So
you can hear me okay?
We're going to find out in a second. Can we hear him okay? Keep talking, Eddie.
Yo, yo, yo.
Still delayed.
Yeah, it's going to be delayed, but I have a feeling we're going to hear you. I see it responding. It should be good. So according to the visual indicator, okay, good. Audio's good. Everything's good. Hello and welcome everybody. This is DH Thorne coming at you with Eddie, as I said. And let's say hello to everybody first. Eddie is here, and he said 30 minutes, and he's stoked. So welcome, Eddie. SJ is here. What's up, SJ? He almost made it to a live, but I guess it's a little bit late. So SJ, if you watch this tomorrow, hello. Sorry you couldn't make it. Tess, what's up, Tess? It's been a hot minute. Kelly, also hello. It's been a hot minute. I think it's been a week. I don't remember if you were here last week, but how you doing, Kelly? Joffrey, it's been a minute as well. We saw you last week. Eddie again, he says, here we go. Jose says, hello, DH Thorne. What's up, Jose? And I'm not ignoring you on Patreon, dude. You mentioned you still had, your question, and I still want to remind you that my thing is I just want to know what it's in reference to, but because I don't want to set up a thing where you pay money and it's like, oh, sorry, I can't help you. So give me a synopsis of your situation if it's still there, and I will help you out. I just need to know going into it. Like, it's kind of like when you call the doctor and say, I need help, and it's not an emergency, and it's like, okay, well, tell me what's wrong. Okay, but I need to see you. Oh, okay. So you're not doing anything wrong. I just want to know what I'm getting into, especially with the time I got. What's up, Vince? Vince is here. He says, howdy, DH. Good to hear from you as usual. Thank you, Vince. Same to you. Echo is here. What's up, Echo? And then Nerta. What's up, DH? How you doing, my brother? So I think this was kind of Eddie's idea tonight. I don't know what we're going to talk about. It's kind of it's sort of a thing that he was like, oh, this would be a great live stream to do. So we're gonna talk about what Eddie wants to talk about, at least for the first half. I just want to make sure everybody's good right now. Let me pop this chat out because I think I'm missing some chats here. So I want to remind everybody that if you have a question or a comment that you want me or Eddie to respond to, and it's really important to you, there are ways to ensure that we will pay attention to it. The first is what Azarath just did.
Yep.
Drop a super. That will always go to the top of the list. Thank you so much, Azarath, for the beautiful $20. Although that is Canadian money, so I guess it's still more than American, right? I forget. But thank you, Azarath. He says, "Yo, what's up? Good to see you. I really appreciate that. Thanks for the tip." So if you want your question or comment to go to the front of the line, any denomination of super chat will, of course, you'll get pushed right to the front. If you can't afford that, that's okay. We are not like that here. This is all on a donation basis. So if you have a question or remember, I'm not that big. It's not like I got like a million people I got to respond to. If you have a question or comment you want us to respond to or see, you can put it in all caps, but please be a little selective with it in that you can either do all caps or you can tag me, or you can even tag my wife, who is there in the chat as Camilla.
I'm here lurking.
She's lurking. So Shrieking Violet. You can tag her, and she will let me know if I miss it. So you can either super chat, all caps, or tag either me or Camilla. Actually, you could probably tag Eddie too. I don't know if Eddie's watching the chat, but if he is, you can probably tag him too.
I am, but that doesn't always mean I see it. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So if you got a question, in order of preference. Now, remember, don't abuse this. If like some people will ask a million freaking questions and tag me. I'm not going to read them. You got to tag me on the ones that that you really need me to look at. And there's no guarantee, but I'm going to do my best. So hopefully, hey, Nina, what's up? I saw you message me. I had my phone down today. I'm going to get to your message. I don't know. It seemed like you had a problem. I only saw the first 5 words of the message because I don't look at my messages until I'm ready to sit down and read them all. So, you can also Discord me the question too, like your problem, because I don't know, it looked like you were having some trouble with something, and you've been a great help to us here, and I want to make sure that we help you out. I just need to make sure I got time. So Your Discord got disabled? Ew, what happened? Ew, that I thought I saw something like that. Ew, that is gross. I hope, what was it? Like they caught you saying things that were verboten in this day and age of enlightenment and reason and wise administration? Yeah.
So Lamia mentioned she likes my background. I don't know what she's talking about. This is my actual ritual chambers.
Dude, that is honestly, like I told you when I first saw that looks exactly like what, so we've got a lot of like urban, exploration spots where I am. Like next time we hold the thing, maybe I'll do it on Long Island. We can like travel around all the spooky spots around where I live.
Ooh.
Eddie, that's almost reasonable for you to do. Like that's a day trip in a hotel room. Like that's not bad for you. You could come hang out with us. Not like Fleshy, you had to travel like all day and all night. And actually, you traveled worse than him because you had to drop people off. So
well,
I guess I should.
Well, right. The way out wasn't too bad, but on the way back, I ended up having to run Lamia. So we left Newark, dropped Jen off in Philly, then somebody off in Harrisburg. Then I drove her all the way out to Pittsburgh and then came back. So
I mean,
like,
you definitely did a circuit that night. I know.
Yeah, it was like 16 hours in the car. So
hard butt. That's what we're gonna call you. Just like
but for like 6 weeks, arm was bugging me because I had my arm. That's my steering arm, and like it still hurts when I do that. So.
Yeah, my wife went, she hates driving, especially long distances. Although she does enjoy country driving. Like it doesn't bother her to drive countryside like that. She likes. It's the city traffic that makes her absolutely.
Driving in New York.
Oh,
she becomes virtually homicidal. When I mean, like literally, like it's like I'm sitting there like I got like the towel and I'm like giving her spit in the bucket, honey, spit in the bucket, and sewing up the cuts over her eyes. Like it's pretty funny.
Too many people.
Yeah, there's too many people. So, yeah. And Lami, of course, you're invited too, although you're a little further away, but you're invited too. If I ever have Eddie out, you can come out. Everybody who's friendly around here who can make it would be fun. Maybe we'll plan another East Coast event sometime in the next 6 months. How would you guys feel about that? Like, there's no reason to do it like just once a year,
There's I don't know if this would be a bit of a haul for you, but there's apparently something happening in Cincinnati in April for Hexennacht, Walpurgisnacht.
Okay. April always sucks for us because we have to, especially my wife, I can usually get out of stuff because I'm only part-time there, but she works like 7 days a week starting in April, just about. So we can't really do anything in April. Even March is a little tough. Like I'm probably going to try to get to Iron Garden again in March, like the last time for a few months. So we're going to be there the end of this month, probably in February, probably in March, and then not at all until like June or July. So yeah, we're going to have a little fun with that, but, yeah, it'd be nice to have you out. But anyway, Nina, I'm sorry to hear that about your server. That, as you know, a lot of that shit's hitting the fan, and we can't talk about it much here on YouTube because there's still things that are verboten, especially in the first, XYZ minutes of a stream.
Yeah.
That's like when they get you. So, even just saying what I said probably put a little bit of a red flag on me, and I'll be demoted again for another month, but, just saying the freaking word. But, yeah, I'm really sorry. I mean, my suggestion to you, Nina, if you want to pick up the pieces and do like a little bit less censorship, there is something from, I think it's Roblox put it out. It's called Gilded. It is a 1-for-1, almost identical copy of Discord. And it has got just about every feature. In fact, it's got one feature I wish Discord has, and that is the ability to set it up so that when people want to join your server, they actually have to go through an application process like on Facebook where you can ask them questions and they have to answer them. And I think there's a little automation, but it's not really a big deal if there isn't, because now you can like filter people out much more easily than making them read a question and having them answer it directly. It's so much easier. So I honestly, if I went back in time and someone said like, let's start an online community, I would have put it on Gilded, to be really honest. So look up Gilded. I'm going to put it in the chat, just the title. That doesn't mean that you can like, not that you would, I know you don't, but that doesn't mean you can just say anything there. Like it still has, but they're common sense rules. Like if you're sitting there going like, power to the you know who's and all that kind of stuff, you're gonna probably have problems. But if you're there's virtually no censorship there that I can detect though. So Discord completely, they completely like went balls deep on the swallowing of the ding dong when it came to censorship. Like they're not, like they're up there now with YouTube, Twitter and Facebook and all that. So you got to watch out. This is why I like when things were getting hairy, and because of certain arguments that happened and some fallout, I deleted the politics channel on my Discord channel. It did get ugly, admittedly, although I think to some degree it was understandably ugly, but it got a little ugly. And so I made a Gilded server instead. And if you want to go to my Gilded server, the only purpose that has, and I'm going to warn you, it is not for everyone. It is literally an echo chamber. It is not designed. Yep. Originally, it was meant to be for everyone. Okay. But because that didn't work out, I was like, I might as well just make it an echo chamber and just use it for sharing information and talking amongst people with a similar point of view. So I'm not saying it's like hard right, because it's not. It's more libertarian and right. So it's certainly not like conservative and all that stuff. It's generally pro. If I say pro MAGA, that's its center, but that doesn't mean it's exclusively pro MAGA. You can be, so long as you're for freedom, we can potentially accept you. So if you're interested, Maiden, you can find the link to that on my Discord. I don't know if I have it in my regular Linktree link list, but it's on Discord in the politics channel. It's like the only post there because you're not allowed to post there anymore. So if you want to join there, find the link on the Discord and shoot over to the Gilded. Gilded is not in the Linktree. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe Camilla can get the link for it if she can find it, but I don't want to pressure her into it if she doesn't have time.
I have that on the PC.
It would be on Discord. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's in the Discord politics channel. So we'll get the link somehow in the chat.
I got it right here.
She got it. Okay. Yeah, Camilla got it. So she's going to put it up in a second. Shrieking Violet's got it. So if you want to join the Gilded, again, you'll understand when you see the application questions, it is an echo chamber. Okay. But we do that to keep the peace, not because we're trying to be an echo chamber. Trust me. I'm sure Eddie will agree. All of us, we have our eyes open and our head on a swivel. We have our biases, but we're not like that. We're not like partisan for partisanship's sake. At least I'm not. I don't know. Some people probably are. Yes,
I'm
I see it.
left libertarian, and I felt perfectly comfortable there. I'm just not there now because I'm generally a pox on all your houses.
Yeah.
I'm picking up on politics.
It's not politics right now. Unfortunately, that's the thing. This is. Look, 2 years ago, I'd be saying left versus right, left versus right. I'm starting to move away from that to people who want freedom versus tyrants, because there's people on the left who are starting to get the same, like, yes, there's still differences. Like Fleshy and I had a beautiful heart-to-heart the other night. Mm-hmm. And I said, we both agreed that we don't care what economic model you like. What matters is human rights. If we get, human rights correct, and he agrees, like the fundamentals of the Constitution as we have it, maybe plus or maybe add a few extras, that wouldn't hurt. But certainly that's a good start. And then economically, we don't care if our rights are being protected by a good system. I care not what kind of money system you have, providing it's not so centralized like with digital currency that I can't be a dissenting voice. Okay. Human rights should prevent that. So if human rights are solid, you can be as left as you want. I don't consider you my enemy. Okay. At all. That's never been my thing. Yes, I have taken up side against that, but only that's not a bias so much as it's just an ideological difference. And I'm not your enemy, right? That's just like, you like chocolate, I like peanut butter, and maybe we can find a way to squish them together. It could happen.
We can still talk to each other instead of at each other.
Exactly. Yeah. And we can listen better. Absolutely. So Maiden of Liberty, the Gilded server is pure politics. It is literally like QAnon plus, like, it's got, people are nuts on there. And like, we have disagreements on there, but they're always civil because we're mostly from the same spectrum of crazy. So as I said, it is an inadvertent echo chamber. But that's not what this stream's about. But I just wanted to put it out there because it did come up. I don't know if I brought it up, but it did come up. And Discord is more for like the magic and just the community. So if you're not interested in the politics, Just stick to the Discord. And if you have problems with anybody or you're having beef or anything, let a mod know. If there's anything on there you see you don't like, let us know. And I'm not saying we'll fix it, but we'll at least look into it. So if you don't want the political chat, just Discord. If you want political chat, Gilded. Okay? So
just remember, Discord is for dick jokes.
Basically, you can get away with a lot of pornographic shit on Discord, but the minute you say anything about, the juice, watch out, because, Pfizer and all of them are deeply balls deep into all social media right now. So, okay, Tropa, that's cool. I'll look at your application later if you haven't submitted it. Some people I know I can just accept that. You don't even have to ask the question, answer the question. Some of you guys, I just know where you're at. And I'll just accept you. What's up, Patchwork? What's going on? And Atropa, hello, by the way. But yeah, Nina, feel free to join my Gilded too, just to check it out. And, you always have good insights and stuff. So feel free to join that. There you go. She just put one up. So Nina's got a Gilded going. Good. All right. So more alternative technology, guys. We need to get away from legacy tech at least a little bit. At least destroy their vertical monopolies a little bit, by just not using them would be a good start. I remember, Eddie, you can probably back me up on this. The internet began as a refuge. It was a refuge for us nerds because we could at least be with other people who, look, the bar to entry was you had to be able to use a computer, and that was a high bar for at least the first half of, the last 20 years or so. So, it was really only in the teens that it really started getting ugly. So.
And you'd be halfway through downloading a really cool porn image that was taking you 20 minutes to download, and your mom would pick up the phone.
Oh man, that's even, I don't know. Let's see. When I first really started getting the internet, I think it was 96-ish. Even though my friends all had it, I only really started using it myself around 96 when I got so at the time, I think we were up to Pentium 2 or Pentium 1. I think it was Pentium 1 at the time. And I bought a really, really old, it wasn't even the high end of the 486s, but I bought a 486. And that was my lifeline to everything. And all I could use was BBSs and video games from the early 90s. It was really fucking great.
Because those topped out at what, 66 megahertz?
Yeah, it was really pathetic. It was literally kilobytes were still a thing. You actually sat there going, megabytes was whoa, oh, I got 8 megs of RAM, dude. Woo. Wow. Whew, I don't know, man. This is beefy. But yeah, no, it was definitely it wasn't even one gigahertz yet. We weren't even up to a half a gigahertz yet. It was still in the very low kilohertz. 486, I think wasn't that how many kilohertz it got on turbo? I forget if that's what it meant. I forgot.
No, 486 was basically just a 386 with the 387 processor on the same die, and then they overclocked it to 66 megahertz. But then the first batch, none of the 387 coprocessors actually worked, so they just sold them as the 486 SX25. So it was literally just a shitty, buggy 386.
That's funny. So that's what I cut my teeth on, besides my Commodore from the 80s. That was my thing. And BBSs were cool because the cool BBSs, you found them on telephone poles, and your friends would tell you about them. They were local, they were regional. It was the one I was on was all the Long Island goth freaks was on this thing. It's the coolest fucking place, man. There might have been 100 users maybe, but you felt it. You met people you knew you could potentially meet. That was the cool thing about it. I miss that shit. So that was the best way to do it back in the day. So.
Well, my problem when I was in high school was the closest ISP was a long distance call. So it wasn't until college. And the reason I knew that about the 486 is my machine for college was a 386 with 8 meg of RAM and an 80 meg hard drive. And I was hot. That's shit hot, on the dorm.
That was hot for a little while, man. That really was. But yeah, so I think we lost our way, man. I think this is what the dark web is for now. And I haven't touched that. I probably should. I'm late to the party. It's everything the dark web is now was what the internet used to be like. Oh, super chat. Thank you, Patchy. He says, what a dinosaur, LMLAO. Yeah, it really...
I'm starting a BBS. It won't be dial-in. It'll still be over TCP/IP, but you
well, that's kind of what I like about Discord, because it's basically a BBS. The only thing that's bad about it,
this is the actual software that used to run the old BBSs. It's just somebody wrapped SSH around it, so you don't have to dial in.
That's
so
funny.
It's got the ASCII graphics and shit.
I wonder if that would still be fun like it was. Like, that's why I like Discord and Gilded, because it's kind of like the old school BBSs, but with modern conveniences. The only thing it doesn't have is the ability to plug MUDs in and shit like that. Like, I loved MUDs. I don't know if you like MUDs.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing. You still haven't. So I was saying is I'll fire up a NetHack server.
Mm-hmm. And what was it, the big one? Like, everyone was on, I think it was called Major Mud, and everybody would have variants of Major Mud. I remember Major Mud. Mud was, what was it?
Multi-user dungeon.
Multi-user dungeon. Sometimes they had 2Ds. Multi-user dungeon.
Yes.
Yeah, and basically it's a text-based dungeon. So, you know,
it's an MMO, but your character is an @ sign walking around.
Hold up. The ones I used to play had no graphics. It was pure descriptive text.
Yeah.
Like the old school adventure games where it was like
Zork.
You know, well, yes, like Zork. Yes. And there was like, you had to draw a map on graph paper as you were playing. And man, those games were fun though. I got to say, like, they were fun. I wouldn't enjoy them now. Like, now I'd be like, this is did not age well. But back in the day, yeah. When you're a nerd, that shit was dope.
Sierra Online had a graphical one that was fantastic. So it was like Hero Quest or Might and Magic, but multiplayer.
Well, I heard tell, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is turning into a nerd cast instead of a magic cast, but maybe we'll end on this one. I have heard tell that EverQuest under the hood is a MUD, but it's the graphics. But the graphics were 3D, so it's like, so like visually it looks like you're moving like very specifically in places, and to a degree you are, but it's still cell based, I think, if I remember correctly. So it's I have to look it up. I'm pretty sure it's a MUD under the hood, like an old school MUD.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's really funny. Which would explain certain things about how the game could function with text, both text chat, because you could chat to the NPCs and they'd chat back like they were listening. Like if you typed like, hello, such and so, you had to make it perfect. But if you said the right keywords, they would respond to you like, you know, but there wasn't like you click on them and a chat box opens. You had to like say something. And then there was commands you could use like in the chat bar. So I really think it was based on a MUD. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So, okay. It looks like we filled in. Looks like we've had enough banter to get the ball rolling. So, you know, what did you have in mind tonight, Eddie? Why did you volunteer to be our tribute tonight on tonight's live stream?
So this is one of those things where we talk about it a lot, but it's not that it's rare that you see it happen, but it's one of those things where I'm sure we've all experienced where somebody will get something that triggers something in somebody else in a completely different context. I think probably the way to proceed is to tell your story, and then I'll tell my story, and then we'll kick it around. And I think it's going to be a positive message for everybody. And I can't guarantee that I won't cry, but I can't guarantee that I will cry. So,
well, if you cry, I can hide your face if that makes you feel better.
No, it's
but hopefully you won't cry. I mean, I'm like
Jimmy Swagger. So I stand against you.
Is it sweat or is it tears? I don't know, but it sure smells.
But no, this is going to be group hugs for Satan. This is going to be a very positive experience for everybody.
And before we get deep into that, Jose was asking me if I still work with Lucifer. Again, I will reiterate that when I work with spiritual entities, it is not in a theistic sense. So that doesn't mean that you don't encounter paranormal stuff with personified entities. It is that, you know, I do not for a moment or an instant or even an iota of an instant or a moment think that Lucifer is an angel that was cast out by God and is all of this stuff that is found in the, we shall say, the collective of our Christian-based culture. That is true for pretty much every mythology too, by the way, under the sun. There is no such thing, in my opinion, but it's a very educated opinion. There is no evidence whatsoever that there are literal theistic deities. That is to say, things living on a literal Mount Olympus in our paradigm of reality. I got to stress that because there is a multiverse out there. And for all we know, Lucifer really did get kicked out of heaven by some god and stuff in another dimension. I can only, but what I would point out to you is that, you know, coming from, depending upon your school of thought, well, if you're Hermetic, if you're Neoplatonic, if you're Advaitin, if you're Kabbalistic, if you're any of those things, you have at least an acknowledgement, if not a belief, in the existence of the superluminal, the existence in the ideal world, the spirit world, whatever we want to call it, okay? There is this idea that the material world is either a precipitate or a reflection of that. And in that reality, the higher you go, the less personified you get. So at our level, everything is anthropomorphic, personified, things that we are, through life experience, trained to recognize as entities, people, things, places, dogs, animals, cats, blah, blah, blah. You go a step above that, and a lot of that's still there. You can still see a lot of that stuff because that's like when you dream or when you do out-of-body stuff. As you go higher or closer to the source or closer to consciousness or closer to God or whatever your paradigm of conversation is, whatever your word for the big, you know, the big BEG at the end of the rainbow is, the further up you go, the more impersonal, enigmatic, ineffable, indescribable, conceptual, all of these sort of abstract words start to come into effect. And you start to realize that everything, including yourself, is a projection of something which Plato described as an ideal form. Other people would describe as an archetype. I like archetype better. I think it's a better definition, at least the way we understand it. But we're talking about, think of it kind of like this. When you look at a river and you see the white water and you see the rapids, you see the ripples, you can know, all it takes is just experiencing a river one time to realize that all of those things that you see on the surface are generally a manifestation of something that exists below the surface. So when you see on a river in one spot in particular, you'll see like a little white water. You know that there's a boulder under there causing the water to do that cascading ripple thing that looks like white water. So you know there's a stone under there, but you can't see it and you got no knowledge of it, but you know it's there. So you're like that. Eddie's like that. Your concept of God or Lucifer or your dog is basically the same idea. You can't see with your mortal senses what is causing the manifestation of this materialistic, even the dream side, even when you're sleeping in your dreams or traveling out of body or having a psychedelic trip or something, you are seeing things through the lens of an incarnate mortal mind, because it's however it's happening, however you want to rationalize it, it is happening in such a way that it is relevant to your material expectations. So like Plato would say, like, everybody who's listening to me right now, imagine a perfect circle, right? Everybody can imagine a perfect circle. But what is a perfect circle? When you think of a perfect circle, you probably imagine like in empty space, just a circle. There's a circle. Okay, that's what a circle looks like. That's the shape of a circle, but what is the actual enigmatic source of that circular shape? You can actually go another layer. People don't realize that what you see, like what you visualize, that's just a superficial coating. Even in your mind's eye, when you're told to visualize energy in your fingers, and that's still symbolic. That's still not the actual. The actual is invisible. You can't see it. It has no shape. All shape, all substance is a manifestation of that ineffable quality that ideal form really is. Okay, so I'll leave it on that, and we'll start going to Eddie's thing. But just so you know, that's my really long way around of explaining that, yes, I do still have work being done with that archetype, but not exclusively. But it is an archetype that I tend to focus on. One of the difficulties of focusing on that archetype is it's literally like Crom from Conan. He doesn't help you with much. You're basically thrown to the wolves every chance it gets. Like it's not that you won't get guidance or help. It's that you aren't going to get your prayers answered. You're not going to get the easy way out. You've got to find it yourself. It's like getting put in an escape room, and there's this knowing beam of light there going, is he going to find a hole in the floor? We'll see. He's still looking up, though. If Patrick says he loves A Perfect Circle, I don't know. Is that a band? I don't think I like them. I feel like I don't like them. Thank you, Patchy. So, okay, Eddie, I want to get back. Sorry, I'm going to shut up for a good... Here, I'm muting myself. So, yes, you were saying...
So, well, you tell your thing about the prayer thing, and then I'll talk about how that triggered this gnosis that's been rattling around in my brain for months.
Yeah, because you said, like, your thing was, like, I had stumbled on something and it affected you.
Yes.
Very deeply. So.
Yes.
Okay. So the other night, while falling asleep, I was... Well, without going into too many details, I was basically doing a meditation where the words I use are disassociate, but there's sort of a misunderstanding of that term. Like someone says like, oh, you're disassociating, or you're detaching or something. That's usually got a negative connotation, like you're numb or you're not, this was a meditative disassociation. This is like when you recognize, normally in most people's lives, we walk around from the frame of reference of the one doing the talking, right? So when you're interacting in your life, you think you're the one talking. You think you're the blah, blah, blahs. Now, it's not that you're not part of that. It's that what you really are is the witness that's observing that. You, the real you, the thing that you are is not the thing talking, because nothing's talking. It's just a bunch of noise, okay? You identify with the source of that noise, so you feel like it's you talking. And it is in the same way that it's your finger, but it's not you as in you're only your finger. So this thing that's going blah, blah, blah is me. It's also you. It's all of us. But what you are is the consciousness that is observing it. Okay. It's the silent witness, as it's said in Advaita. I'm not sure if there's an equivalent in Neoplatonism or whatever, but it's kind of there as the monad, or as the spark that is the soul coming off the monad. Okay. So you are that. That is what you are. You are the all-seeing eye that is focused on this particular little tiny ripple in this infinite ocean. That's what it's focused on right now. You're that eye. Okay. Which is probably why we say I. But anyway, let's not get into that. You are that I. Now, you are not the one speaking specifically. The speaking is part of you, but you're not that. So when you dissociate in meditation, what you're doing is you're not like separating yourself, but you're recognizing that sort of you're recognizing like normal. So I'm going to try to do this visually. Normally you're like looking at the back of your hand, thinking you're your hand. I don't know if I'm on camera. You're this hand looking at this like, I'm this hand right here. Yes, that's me. Blah, 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 blah. Look, I'm D.H. Thorne. Ha ha ha. But you're really this hand watching this hand. Okay. And disassociation in this meditative thing that I'm talking about is you're normally kind of like this. You think that you're this, but you pull back. It's almost like out of body, but it's not out of body. It's disassociative. I am consciousness, not D.H. Thorne. Right? I can't explain it too clearly because it's something that doesn't have a language, right? That doesn't make sense. So you dissociate from this thing and you're observing this phenomenon that you think you are. And you don't necessarily have this sense of implicit control or presence within it. You just sort of let it do what it wants, and it still does everything you would normally do. Like that's the wild part of this. So while doing this at bedtime, doing this really deep state of meditation, it's sort of like being in almost like Stranger Things when Eleven would go into like the sensory deprivation tank. You sort of... Like, I don't need a sensory deprivation tank. I can do it other ways, although I've never used one. It probably works really well. I'd like to try it. But you could just meditate, and you can have a very similar, like, the body just kind of goes away. So I was in that, like the body was gone. All of the things that are, I am this guy were gone. But there was a vague awareness of the bedroom, the sounds of the bedroom, but I wasn't that anymore. I was just watching it from a distance, but a infinitely close distance. That doesn't make sense, but that's the only way I can put it. So I'm watching all of this, and I am now associated with consciousness, not the thing that's doing the thinking or talking. And in that state, I sort of like thought to myself, okay, consciousness is God, right? That is, it's either, depending upon your worldview, that's either God, or it's a piece of God, or it's something that God has put there, whatever it is for you. For me, that is God. Consciousness is, it's a dimensionless, formless, boundless thing that is, everything occurs within it. And we're all that, okay? I'm not exclusively saying me. I'm talking all of us are that me. Eddie's that me. You're that me. We're all that consciousness that has no center, no edge. Everything is within it, including you, including me. We're all the same consciousness, okay? So when I'm in that state looking at myself, it occurred to me, like, without being a submissive twat about it, you know, not in a worshipful sense, okay? It occurred to me, that is to say, the person I was watching, that if that is what I am, then I'm going to talk to that like I used to pray to God in the old school churches. I'm going to address consciousness with my personified self, and I'm going to, like, you know, silently pray to it. I'm going to let that pray to me. I'm going to observe that. It's sort of like, I didn't cause it to happen. I willed the experience to manifest. That's why I say you don't cause things. You just kind of, it's more like reading a choose your own adventure and turning to a chapter that you want to read. Okay. That's really more like what it's like. So I willed, I placed myself in the timeline where that happened. And when it happened, there was this, you kind of have to read it in Discord because it's a little distant for me now in my own mind, but there was this overwhelming realization that that is what the reality of prayer should be. So what monotheistic religion does to prayer is they take what I'm talking about as God and they externalize it. They say God is this guy up in the clouds, or maybe they're really mystical and they recognize that God isn't some dude with a beard in the clouds. Maybe it's just, it's, you know, Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever you want to call it, you know, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, whatever you want to call it, Tetragrammaton, or the Great Spirit, or Brahman, even, whatever it is for you. But most religions externalize that rather than trying to get you to see the connection you have to it, or that that's what you really are, or anything like that. They don't want you to know that. So from that frame of reference, I then just sort of allowed that prayer to occur. And not like, oh, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, I'm such a worm, forgive me. No, it was just love. It was just, I was going to just have it do a regular prayer, you know, just like, oh Lord, you know, these are my woes and this is that. And I realized, why is it whenever we pray, it's always just some kind of fucking dump? Like, why are we dumping on God? Like, you know what I mean? When I was a Christian, I used to always think, why am I dumping on God? Not that like that's wrong, but it's like, you know, talk about the weather too. You know? It doesn't have to just be dumping all the time. I know there's some people who say, oh no, you should always be serious. Okay, whatever. But, you know, personal relationship with the divine is way more like, you know, fulfilling, I would think. So I was going to let it just do whatever. But instead, like, one of the first things it did was just, I love you. You know, it was just, I love you, God. And instead of directing that to some external thing that is imaginary, to the demiurge, if you will, it was directed at consciousness. And consciousness, that divine that I am, the overwhelming feeling of just indescribable love for both sides of that exchange was, it was transformative, to say the least. I literally was like, if I wasn't in such a trance, I probably would have cried, or I would have come close. Like, it was probably the second or third most impactful experience I've had through meditation that was like, whoa. Like, not just, oh, I had an out of body whoa. I mean, like, paradigm changing whoa. Like, I can't look at the world this way again anymore. Like it's now different forever. And it was kind of like one of those like, oh, I get it. I've been deluding myself even in my, more recent wisdom, I guess you could say. I've been still deluding myself because I'm still operating most of the time from an egoistic frame. We all are. If you're mortal, you're doing that. Okay. That's someone who says like, oh, you need to abandon your ego forever. Fuck you. You're an idiot. You know what you're talking about. Ego is pretty much a given. If you're here experiencing this, there's at least a seed of ego, if not a whole, sophisticated nonsense. So that moment was very transformative. So I guess that's what Eddie was referring to. And, I don't know if it's for the same reasons. I think like he's got a slightly different, I don't want to say perspective because that implies something I don't mean. He's got a slightly different, I think it hit him in a different part of the feels than it hit me.
Yes. But different, maybe a different road, but the same starting point and the same ending point.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was that there's this, I don't know, I can't explain it. I'm sure everybody's had it. This feeling of there is some kind of gnosis trying to get through to me, and I don't quite have all the pieces of it yet. And usually, well, in the olden days, that would drive me nuts, and I would go and read every book possible and go do a bunch of stuff and try to find it. But now, at least I'm smart enough to just sit there and wait for it to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed up, and it was the concept of if I'm me and I'm also that, then why not? In left-hand path communities, especially me, we like to talk a lot about worship of self and deification of the self. But when was the last time any of us actually did it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm using worship here in kind of a specialized technical sense. I don't mean the sort of bowing and groveling and scraping that most people normally think of. I'm talking about more of the medieval Christian practice of pursuing God the way one would a lover,
Mm-hmm.
almost like a stalker. You're God's stalker, and you're just following him around everywhere, and you won't leave him alone, until he pays attention to you. And that just made everything click. And then, as you could tell from the rant, things are happening fast. And of course, when I think that way, the way some people think out loud, I think at a typewriter, at a keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a couple days ago. So
if I can interject for 1 second, one thing that is in the left-hand path that's like a cancerous idiocy is the self that they deify is not the true self. It is the ego self that most practitioners misunderstand, and they deify. In other words, it's not that your ego can't be exalted or venerated or loved or anything like that, because the divine loves you, right? If we're looking at this from this mortal dualistic sense, when the Christians say God loves you, they're not wrong. It's just that you're God loving yourself. That's the difference. That's the big difference between the non-dual or monist perspective versus the dualistic one. So in a way, you could almost say that like the big difference is one's dualistic and one's not. From the non,
sorry,
no, I'm done. I'm going to rant.
I should define my terms. So the way I define worship, I'm also using prayer in a specific sense, which is you're not saying anything. Mm-hmm. It's more in the Catholic context. It would almost be the concept of like Eucharistic adoration, only there's no Eucharist there. The thing you are simply being in the presence of is God. Mm-hmm. And the worship of self, again, the self I'm talking about here is not me.
Or at least not exclusively. At least not exclusively that.
There is a line of continuity from this to that, but it's more in the sense of what Crowley was talking about with the higher self and the holy guardian angel, right? Mm-hmm. It's exactly what Crowley was talking about in his I can't remember which Liber it was, but it was
it is
where he
funny because
lays.
didn't I say, like, does that mean I'm a Thelemite now?
Well, yeah.
Oops, Thorne discovered Thelema without reading a book. Oops.
I want to say it might have been Liber Samek, but it's the one where he's talking about the Bornless ritual and knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, et cetera, et cetera. And he sort of gets this at the end of it. He sort of gets to this longish paragraph where he's talking about, you know, the difference between will and true will and ego and the higher self and yada, yada, yada. And, you know, he almost does it in the form of like a question and answer, where the question then becomes, well, are you saying that I'm God? And he says, well, if your true will is your destiny, in the sense that you and everything in your universe was created to get you onto this path and to lead you to this point. And if the thing that created that destiny is your own higher self, then surely that thing fulfills all of the practical definitions of God. And he finishes it with four really famous words, which is, then thou art that.
Yeah, Tat Vamasi, which all the cool kids at the back of the bus, they all say that shit in their own cultural way. Like, it's every single, even the Bible, even the Holly Bible says it. Did I not tell you that you are gods? I mean, come on, it's they're all saying, I know that one's often taken out of context and repurposed, but I'm just saying, is it not in everything that in the cool kids side of the bus, it seems to be a very common thing. And one thing I'd like to say as an analogy too, let me give you an analogy of what this is like from someone's like who disobjectifies and dissociates and everything all the time. I want you to imagine for a moment that you are hopped up on some kind of drug that causes you to forget shit really easily. Okay. And I want you to imagine someone led you to a wall with a giant mirror on it, and they stood you in front of that wall for a while. And after a while, you forget completely that you were walked in front of this mirror, and you end up talking to this thing in the mirror, thinking it's like a bird that doesn't recognize itself. So you're talking to this thing in the mirror. So when you're talking to God, you're looking in the mirror going, oh Lord, you know, please save me, God. And it's this externalized thing that you don't recognize as yourself because you've been hit with the dum-dum drugs. Okay. So you're looking in this mirror and you're looking at this thing and you're externalizing everything. You don't realize that. So the path of, shall we say, enlightenment or apotheosis or whatever your word for it is to invert that relationship so that you recognize that's just your reflection you're talking to. The one that's looking at the reflection is who you are. You're not the reflection. Okay. That is a very sloppy, but accurate sort of way of looking at it. You have to realize you're not the reflection of yourself, which is this and Eddie and the world and the wall. That's all a reflection of what you are. You're the one that's doing the addressing. Okay. And it's not even the words, even the words themselves are part of the reflection. You've got to recognize that everything you experience in this reality. So my new book, which will probably never get published at this rate, my new book, one of the chapters begins by saying to the effect of, in the animal kingdom, there are only so many animals that can recognize their reflection in a mirror. Humans being one of them, regularly speaking. Some can do it, some can't. Some, half their species can, it's like rare, but it can be done. For the most part, humans and only a few animals can recognize themselves in the mirror. Most of the time, they think it's another animal or a rival or something, like a bird. That's why you don't give a bird a mirror in their cage, because they start thinking that's a rival or a mate or something. They don't see it as themselves. So in the material context, that's a reality. Only certain animals can recognize themselves in a reflection. In the mystical, spiritual sense, only some people, doesn't mean only they can, but only some people seem to demonstrate the same ability in the spiritual sense, to recognize themselves in the reflection of reality as they see it. So when we are What that means is the enlightened or the lucid or whatever your term for those people recognize themselves in the manifestation of reality all around them. They recognize, and when we talk about themselves, I don't mean D.H. Thorne is reflected, although it is. It's D.H. Thorne's in relationship to the reflection because it's part of the reflection. I'm talking about the enlightened. They recognize the divine that they are reflected in all of this seemingly evil, inferior, broken, flawed, but it's not broken and flawed. It's actually just, it's distorted. Okay. You're not looking at it. So like in Neoplatonism, especially Gnosticism, the material world is evil. Now, when Plotinus said the material world's evil, he didn't mean evil in the moralistic sense. He meant evil in the more ancient meaning, which is a form of darkness or ignorance, okay? Mm-hmm. With light being illumination / conscious / awareness, kind of means the same thing, because in their idea, light enabled vision, and so light was a perfect metaphor for consciousness. So the light is the divine shining on itself, and it manifests itself in that sense. And so where there was darkness, that is ignorance, that is the inability to perceive, that was what evil was, because they reasoned, Plotinus, Iamblichus, Proclus, all of them reasoned that the reason that human beings do evil is because we're ignorant. We don't realize what we're doing half the time, or we have bad intentions because we don't know what we are. It's just like I often say to people, when you have a really well-developed sense of your true nature as the divine, you have a very intuitive and sincere sense of compassion for the world and for each other. It's not that you're incapable of doing harm. It is that your starting point is no longer just, how do I fill my stomach? How do I get what I, because you realize this, you're not it. This is just another part of the collage, the mural of the reflection of yourself. And it's important. You don't want anything to happen to it. You still take care of it, but it's more like a borrowed car rather than your own car.
It's a rental.
It's a rental rather than, yeah. Or maybe that makes you take better care of it because it's not yours. You know what I mean? But the point is that you don't take it like it's happening to you anymore. It's rather a character in a video game where it's like, I don't want to lose my character's life because then I gotta fucking, this game don't have continues. This game, when you die, it's it. Unless the quantum immortality thing is true, and no matter what you do, you always live forever. I don't know about that one. It's a funny thought, but I don't know about that one. So you don't get continues. When this is done, like, well, that was a fun game. Let's go play another one. It's kind of like that. It's like you get New Game Plus, but you don't get to play the same guy again. Mm-hmm. So, so that is an important threshold of realization to have. And a lot of stuff like falls out of that, so to speak. And what I think happens is a lot of these ideas, somewhere along the way in antiquity, someone clicked, got it, and tried to share it, and then maybe they got it, maybe they didn't, but a movement starts, a religion builds, and eventually someone says, you know what, this would be a really cool way to control civilization. Let's turn it into a system of control. And that's how you get most religions. Christianity, Egyptian religion, all of them. Every religion is doing this. Greek religion, all of them do it. So.
Well, yeah, let me summarize all of religion, but also all of human history. And then some asshole showed up.
He's not wrong. That's literally it. That's all. I love that. Where'd you get that from? I don't know if I'm not saying you couldn't have made that up, but that's
like right now. So
that was perfect. That's gotta go, dude. If you made that up, that's gotta be a tattoo. All of human history could be summarized of, and then an asshole showed up, or then an idiot showed up. I love it.
But yeah, so I tried it, and it's been, I guess tonight would be fourth night, I don't know, whatever. And it's a little slippery right now trying to get a hold of it. But the very first thing I discovered when I tried this sort of, well, why don't I just, I was a very serious Christian for most of my life, and I went to seminary, and I have shelves full of books on doing exactly this thing. Why don't I try approaching it that way?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the very first thing I discovered was there's a whole big well of shame and training and shadow shit related to all of that I haven't even touched yet. Right. Mm-hmm. It's like when I decided to make the break, when the break happened, I took all of that shit and I put it on a little shelf over here and decided I was never going to touch it again. And that's not going to work. I got to deal with that. But that led me then to sort of the more practical, the more practical but emotional reality of what I've been experiencing this far, and really my whole journey on this path, which is, you know, you watch or you read most Black magicians, right? Especially, well, not magicians in general, but especially the ones on sort of the spookier, you know, I dress in black with shirts that have Crowley on.
I'm surprised that shirt didn't sell better. Of course, we did rip off that joke, but I'm surprised that shirt didn't sell better.
I was hoping it would summon Billy Brujo back from whatever void he disappeared to, because I think he's the guy who came up with that gag. But it's everybody. You have a lot of people who the entire focus, it seems, of their work is getting shit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And again, no,
that's a stage, it's a phase, but it is but that is what it is.
And a lot of people who do, you know, books and teaching on this is what they tend to talk about the most, because they know that's what brings the people in the front door. And and to be a little bit more, well, you're being very charitable. I'm going to say in a lot of cases they don't know better either. Well, yeah. So, there are a lot of people who just go past that.
Yeah. In fact, in some ways, they're still on that, and that's why they sell that, because that's their way of accomplishing that. Them, it's like, that's my magic, as I sell this shit. And just saying, I'm not saying that applies to anybody you know in particular. I'm just saying that, trust me, I'm in the biz. I know who my compatriots are. I know what their mindset is. Unfortunately, a lot of them, it's dollar signs. I got to tell you.
Yeah. But, well, and bringing them to the door, there's nothing wrong with that, because, you know, if and when I ever finally launch that YouTube Magic 101 course I've been meaning to do.
Well, you're going to charge for it. I wouldn't blame you. It's not you can't.
That's what I'm going to lead with. And there's a couple of reasons why you lead with that. One is that gets people in the door. And once I got them in the door, then I can hit them with the rest of the stuff. Mm-hmm. And also, for 80% of the people, probably, that's a number I just pulled out of my ass, which is true of 80% of all figures. That's all they need, you know? Yeah. That's all. Yeah. That's really all they need. You know, if they just had, and I'm not even saying it from it's some perspective of like they're still mired in Maya or anything like that. It's just like really the only things that are wrong with them in their lives could be solved by getting laid and getting paid. Yeah. You know, a little bit of love and a little bit of money, and they're happy. You know?
See, a lot of people are stuck in religious asceticism, in that they expect spiritual liberation to come through asceticism, and that has never been borne out by any spiritual teacher. They simply warn against becoming attached to things. It's a totally different sentiment.
Well, and that leads me to category 2 of a lot of people, and I include myself in this, which is, you know, the really hardcore guys are like, you got to do the shadow work and you got to do this. And it's almost like it becomes kind of a point of pride of
there's still a goal there. There's still I want shit. It's just now it's not material shit. Now it's either growth or experience or something else, but you're still attached to a material or egoistic frame.
And it becomes almost kind of it did for me, a sort of perverse sense of pride of how badly You know, right.
Yeah.
Like I'm hardcore, you know, I had the spirits completely detonate my life, you know.
Hey,
Like
some people would argue that that was my whole Shadowgate project, which was I didn't just inflict it on me. I was like, Planet, it's your turn too, bitch. And I
right. Again, nothing wrong with that. That is perfectly appropriate, you know, stage 2. Right. But the thing is, and we all talk about this. I don't know about all of us, but a lot of us do.
Us superior, enlightened, smug wonderful motherfuckers.
Right. But especially like, you know, Jen's in the chat. Hi, Jen. You know, people who spend a little more time on the love and light, around love and light type people, witchy people, is that, you know, we talk about, oh, you have to do self-care and all of this other stuff. But at least for me, and it seems like a lot of other people, even calling it self-care is a bit of a stretch, right? It's really just taking a break. Like, you're not even really taking care of yourself. You're going to just take a break. You're going to get something to eat and you're going to go back to the grind, you know? But genuine self-love, when was the last time anybody did that? Like, really sat there and told yourself positive things and looked for things to compliment yourself about.
It's like I said, you got to be careful with self-talk because you're not the only one listening, so to speak. You know, the person you think is the one saying it is not the one listening to it, you know? A lot of people will call what I'm describing as God the subconscious. Fair enough. I consider the subconscious just to be the part of the divine we don't pay attention to. But yes, you could argue that it's the subconscious. But some people would say the little child inside you, right? The one that doesn't talk, that listens. When you're sitting there going, you suck, you fucking suck, you suck, you did this wrong, you did that wrong. Even when you say something good, like, hey, you did this pretty cool, blah, blah, blah. There's still always a tone in there. There's still always a sense of judgment. Not constructiveness, not anything positive. It's always a judgment. The ego's a judgmental fucker. The ego doesn't know how to love. The ego only knows how to judge because it's born of division. It's born out of distinction and separation and ignorance. It is not born out of love. Okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not evil. It's just that as a habit, it forms, it appears out of ignorance, and that becomes loathing very quick, you know.
I was keeping it together until you brought up the inner child.
Sorry, Eddie.
It's okay. My point is, if you only get one thing from this, get this. Don't let this thing that we're doing become just a different baseball bat that you use to beat yourself up.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's true. You know, I mean, that's so true. I mean, I guess we all have to beat ourselves up a little bit. That's how we learn. But yes, I mean, it's abuse. It's abusive. And, you know, here's an ironic thing. Okay. The Love and Lighters, we throw a lot of shade at them. Yeah. But I see it as a pipeline.
Yep.
Sort of like there's a pipeline that brings you from one political party to the other and all this kind of shit. There is a pipeline at work here for enlightenment. A lot of people, you know, the youngest of souls fall. So love and light isn't the problem by itself. Love and light, as in its purest sense, is actually what it's about.
Yes.
The problem is that what the average person manifests as love and light is a childish, immature, Pollyanna, completely delusional, completely egoistic, completely bullshit facade that is not actual love and light. You can tell by the level. Now, I'm being very judgy here, so I'm sounding like a hypocrite. I'm going to be honest with you. A love and lighter wouldn't do that. A love and lighter would say, I love and light, and I would never harm the innocent, and that person's terrible, and blah, 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 blah. It's very egoistic. So the pipeline goes like this. We're all born pretty innocent, and we're all born with the actual love and light. When we're born, I'm not to say that some people are not born psychopaths and all that shit, but I'm saying that by and large, just like with animals, humans are born like animals. We are not born with this, with evil in our heart. Quite literally, we are born without delusion. When you're born, you don't know you're a person. You know your consciousness. Yep. Like there is no thought that says I'm a person yet. So you are flawless when you're born. I hate to tell you, you are. It's not that your body's flawless. It's not that that person's going to be flawless. I mean, when you're born, when you incarnate, you're as close to enlightened as you're going to get in a living body, in my opinion. Okay. As you develop, you begin to take on all these egoistic trappings, and more it becomes about you and who you think you are. And that delusion becomes sort of like, you know, the first threshold of the dark night of the soul, because it's all about eventually hitting that. Okay. More than once, but there's usually one big one that usually leads to the big, that's the abyss. That's where Karanzan or Legion is hiding.
Yep.
It's that dark night. So you've got to go through that. And most people, their journey looks like this. I'm innocent, I'm born innocent, and I get built up as this whatever. And then the world says, no, you're not. Or, you know, the universe starts trying to teach you non-attachment. And it does that by first getting you really good and attached. And then it teaches you to not be attached to that shit. And it does it one step at a time, one disappointment at a time. And it's not that I'm saying you're meant to be unhappy. People misinterpret this and think I'm saying you're supposed to be unhappy. That's what it means. No, fool. I'm saying you learn to be not attached to these things that you think make you happy, and then realize what happiness really is. And it's liberation from those things. It's the ability to be happy even in the middle of a jail cell. I'm not saying I'm there yet, by the way. Like, you can know what the truth looks like without being able to do it, right?
Yes.
It's being able to be at peace, even in the midst of absolute horror, because you know that this isn't happening to you. This is a show you're watching, basically. This is Netflix for the soul. So as you go through this pipeline, some people, you can tell what chakra people are stuck on, so to speak. Like, I'm a firm believer, not in chakras as a literal thing in your body or something, but as a metaphor. Chakras are like for Eddie, like the Qliphoth and the Sephiroth. For me, it's chakras. To me, like, they're really good for that. And you can visualize them and think of them however the fuck you want. You can even go one for one with, if you understand that there's more than the 7 you've been usually shown, there's actually like hundreds of them. You can actually, like, very sloppily and imprecisely map them to other traditions and their ideas of the self and the soul and everything else. It's not hard to do, but you can tell where people get stuck. And when I say get stuck, I mean that as we go through this pipeline of enlightenment, it's not that it happens in sequence from root to crown, okay? But it is sort of a stopgap. Like, if your heart chakra is blocked off, good luck opening the throat. Good luck opening the third eye. Good luck opening the crown. I know this because for a little while now, I've been told the other night, I have a very, very, let's just say it's like an epic monster parasite attached to me. And I probably plugged it in there myself, is the read I'm getting off of it. And it's mostly in the heart zone, which is probably why that whole I love you thing, you know, in that meditative state was what I did, was probably because intuitively I'm like, the only way out is to love. It's the only way out, and to not be attached, to love in a non-attached way. How the fuck, you know? So this parasite, when it attacks something, it'll clog up, it'll basically, what parasites do is they will, the way that parasites feed off of you, be it a vampire or whatever you want to call it, the way a parasite gets you is it finds ways, or I should say really you find ways, if we're being honest, you find ways to do things that cause delusion, distraction, attachment, pain, and a clouding of the mind. So that, for example, my biggest trigger in the last 3 years, if it hasn't been yours, has been the state of the world, the corruption, the conspiracy theories one by one coming true. all of this shit going on. And then it's not that it's coming true. In fact, that's vindicating. That doesn't bother me. Seeing it coming true isn't bothering me. What's bothering me is the propaganda and the disinformation and the fact that people are so tribal and divided, and you've literally got people fighting to be slaves and other people saying, stop this shit. We don't want to be that. And we're all divided against each other, even the ones that are trying to be free. So that's bothering me, especially when there's a lot of psychic attacks out there right now. I'm talking about people who don't even do magic. You go on Twitter and half the fuckers that are mean are bots, and you shouldn't even pay any attention to them. But even the ones that aren't bots, you know, we take on that shit and it becomes a toxic sludge that clogs our various, well, it's not that I'm a victim of something. That's not like, you know, people online hurting me. What that is that's me attaching to what they're doing and using that as an excuse to be in pain and to struggle. And that's, why do I do that to myself? Because I'm learning non-attachment, guys. The universe teaches us non-attachment, whether we want it to or not. So how does it do that? It gets you good and attached to something. It really makes you go, I need this to live. I need this to be happy. And then it will find a way, usually politely at first. It'll just start tugging at it and say, hey, you know, would you be all right if this wasn't here? Fuck you, I need that. Okay. You sure, Yank? Huh? You sure? No, I need that. And you'll get more and more. And what it ends up being is you're going against the flow. You're going against the will. I don't mean some external God's will. I'm talking about your highest, truest, deepest, transcendent will before you even know what it is. You're going against that. And when you go against that, a cool thing really happens. You incarnate. Because that's ego. Ego is going against the flow of the will. In every single instance, this is why yoga is yoking. This is why yoga means union. It is not about becoming master of the universe and what I say becomes law. No, it is, and it's not relinquishing anything. That's the other extreme of wrong, is that you're surrendering to something. What you're doing is you're realizing that it is always your will that is done, no matter what it is. Even your worst day is your will being done, and it is inevitable. And when you recognize that, and it's not easy to do, the next time something really bad happens in my life, I'm going to need someone, not in the moment of worst pain, but at some point down the road, to remind me, you centered yourself in this event, okay? And this is a growth moment, okay? You know, someone's going to die, something's going to happen, I'm going to lose something, and I'm going to be broken, and I'm going to be fucked up. And hopefully within a shorter amount of time than the average person, it'll click and I'll go, I'm attached, that's why this hurts. So the parasite that I got going on is showing me how attached I am, because that's how it feeds. Now, parasites they're bad, but let's think of them more like maggots that clean a wound, just like any shadow person does. They don't have to be bad. They are part of the ecosystem of mortality, and they're necessary. How we deal with them is the trick. That's the secret. If we fight them, like I'm talking about, treat all parasites like shadow people, even if they're not. Don't go after them like, you're my enemy and I must crush you. Yes, you can do your warding and your shielding and your protections and your casting outs and your empowerments and all that. But at the end of the day, you've got to recognize you're doing this to yourself somewhere. And you've got to embrace even that parasite with a certain amount of love. So for example, I'm attacking this cultural issue head on. I'm going, fuck you. You're my enemy. I'm going to fight for freedom. Okay. And that's hurting me. That's making me sick because I'm just some guy with no real authority or power over the materiality of that thing going on. I can't stop what's going on because what's going on is an illusion. I can only go to a timeline of reality where it's not happening. And to get there, because I'm still embedded in this egoistic state, I can't just jump the track and go to sleep tonight and wake up in La La Land where all of my libertarian dreams have come true. Or perhaps I could, but because my ego won't accept that, it's never going to happen. I'm attached to this timeline. Okay? In order for me to jump the tracks, I have to be completely detached from the timeline, which no one's going to do that. Okay. Maybe someone would, but they couldn't prove it to anybody else when they do it anyway. It'll be like the Mandela effect when it happens anyway. You know, I remember yesterday, didn't Trump lose the election? Like, why is he president again? You know, like something weird, crazy, big like that. Like, you're going to feel insane. My point is, you'll feel crazy if you make such a jump. You won't be okay. You're going to be like, holy shit, what changed? This is weird. Now, so you've got to embrace the fact, in my case, for example, I've got to embrace the fact that I am fighting for something. And I've got to recognize, however, that impulse is not bad. True, you can't save the world. That shouldn't be your attachment. But I am doing it for a noble, in my mind, cause. So I can't hate myself for being wrong or doing this. I've got to hold this little kid and say, I know why you're fighting. Okay. So part 2 of that prayer was to let my mortal self be like, God, look, you know, could we get through this? Can we see our way out? And you know what hit me really hard as the ego side was this wave of love and reassurance that it's all going to be not just okay, not even like your side's going to win. None of that. It was just, it's all part of the plan. Not even because we're going to win part of the plan. I mean, this is for you. This is your growth. Now, what does that even mean? Because if that's all the same non-dual entity, what does that even mean? Imagine, this is a bad metaphor, but imagine, you know, you're a dungeon master and you're designing a game that you're going to play by yourself. You're going to take the stupid pills, you're going to forget, and you're going to play this game, and you're going to dungeon master yourself. And you're going to walk yourself through this shit. Now, the level 1 understanding is, I'm learning life lessons so that I can become like a god someday. Okay, that's your level 1 understanding. Level 2 understanding, I am a god and I'm doing this so that I can be a better god. Okay, level 2 understanding. The highest level of understanding is, God just wants to see it through your eyes. It's here to enjoy the ride. It's gonna, you know, maybe you get put in front of a firing squad and the whole time, oh, this fucking sucks. When it's over, it's just like a good horror movie. And you're like, oh, dude, that was sick. That's kind of what it's like. Yes, it's a bad metaphor. It's not, don't take it too literally. Just treat that as a very subtle perspective.
So to piggyback on that, and also what Jen's been talking about, is this whole thing that we've experienced from a couple of different perspectives is the essence of working with the Qliphoth, right? It's the recognition that the world is not just love and light. It is also messy and chaotic and dark, and you have to experience the one before you can get the other.
I mean, this is a sadomasochistic masquerade ball of epic proportions.
Yes.
That's what this is. You're supposed to lean into all of it.
Right. And the trap also exists on the dark side,
Sure
which
does.
is
That's the pipeline.
You start to think that that's all there is. And no. It's both. You have to have both. You have to have that balance. And then the other one is, this is an absolutely terrible idea. It will ruin your life. I highly recommend you all do it.
Are you about to bring up psychedelics? We can't do that on this channel. Okay, good.
Is Crowley said, and I bring this up all the fucking time, right? And it is absolutely the most brilliant thing Crowley said, because I did my version of it at 17 and I'm still trying to get over it, right? Like I'm almost able to get out of the hospital kind of thing with how badly this fucked me up. Is anyone at all, right, can instantly have the grade of Magister Templi, so Master of the Temple, right? Bearing in mind that the Golden Dawn and everyone before Crowley said that it is impossible to achieve this grade in a human body, right? You have to literally be a god to experience this, right? This is the equivalent of someone being a Moses, kind of thing. Anyone could have that degree. Any random asshole off the street could have that degree if all he did was take the oath. And the oath is Crowley. It's long-winded and flowery, but it comes down to, I am going to accept every single thing that happens to me, around me, anywhere in the world, anywhere in my awareness, anywhere. I'm going to take all of that as a direct communication to my soul from God, from the perspective of, yes, I'm talking about my higher self. It's anyone, you want the shortcut? Here's the ultimate shortcut. The ultimate shortcut is my version of it when I was 17 was basically praying to the great whatever, which is still what I call it, and saying, I will go anywhere, I will do anything, I will suffer anything, I will sacrifice whatever it takes. I just want to know the truth. And I saw it. I saw it all in about a split second, and it wrecked me. And it's still wrecking me. But
it's wrecking. But see what it's wrecking? It's wrecking the ego. And there's attachment to that, and that's why, you know, I look at it like this, okay? Have you ever had like a really bad stomach ache? This is going to be like a really stupid analogy. Have you ever had like a really bad stomach ache?
What, just this week?
And you know that moment when the stomach ache finally ends? And there is this just euphoric, just, oh, it's over.
I'll one up you. It's the moment when you finally take the dump.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And there's pain in that dump.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's a good kaboom on that. But so when I had that first, maybe it happened younger to you. It's possible. When I had that first transcendental moment, the tears were running down my face, and it was a beautiful agony. It was orgasmic. It wasn't pleasure. It was like that feeling of just dropping the biggest deuce you've ever dropped, but it was a soul dump. It was not. So that's enlightenment. That's literally what they're describing, is your soul taking a giant X-lax and a shit. In fact, rituals are a form of spiritual X-lax. Okay. Because if you like, I need to do one because I haven't done one in so long. That's probably why I'm fucked up. Yep. I need a colon cleanse in my soul. So this is essentially, and this is what, you know, we hurt. Like we sit here and reflect on this and go, oh, this hurts, because we're still clinging to the part that's not true. We suffer because we think we're not supposed to. That's the only reason any of us in this life ever suffered. Now, going back to what you said that Crowley said, once again, I sit there going, I need to start reading some motherfuckers to save me some time, because I come up with these things, think it was me who thought it, and then Crowley says it, or fucking Shankara says it or something.
Bill Duvendak, he's my nemesis.
Yeah, right? That's just like there's people out there in the world that it's like, fuck you, how come you said it and I didn't know it existed? Fuck you. Of course, you do reach a point at some point where you start correcting them, and that's always funny because that's like you get egoistic a little bit. Like I found myself correcting Plotinus the other day. I was like, fuck, that's probably not good. But yeah, so you know, you find yourself like, Eddie, you know, because I've texted you out of the blue and like, motherfucker, I had no idea that's what this was about. Fuck you. I thought I invented it, but no, it's in every book about it. You know,
oh, yeah.
Insert thing here. Like it's happened a couple times now, and it's very fucking frustrating. It sounds like I'm being arrogant, like, oh, I invented this. No, I'm frustrated because it's like, it's a pleasant frustration, because the good news is by doing it that way, it's more like you're validated when you see other people say it. So it's not like, you believed it and then validate it because like someone told it to you and you believed it and then you proved it to yourself. It's more like you already found it and then someone's like, yeah, that's the golden ticket. You didn't know? You're like, fuck. So it is a little bit of a waste, especially if you're like me, where you do crave a little bit of validation from my egoistic self does crave a little validation. I'm not going to deny it. Anybody who says that they don't is a liar. So I crave a little validation for the things that I think I discovered. And when I see I didn't discover it, but someone else came up with it, I go, well, fuck. That's very validating. But now I'm going to look like a ripoff artist when I act like it was my idea.
Yeah. But there is a certain amount of gratification in independently discovering it.
Yes, it's a little bit like that episode of South Park, the Simpsons did it. That's kind of what it's like.
Yes.
Simpsons did it. Oh, Behemoth's here. What's up, Behemoth? Behemoth X, the great and powerful. What is up, Behemoth X? My friend, my brother. You know, one of these days, you'll have to come on and talk to Eddie, and I'll just sit here watching. But what's up, Behemoth? How's it going?
I was going to steal one of Behemoth X's backgrounds instead of this one.
You did say that, too.
Yeah.
It is pretty... You know, you should just put it on real quick just to fuck with him.
Well, the problem was I couldn't find one that was a decent resolution that wouldn't also like have his head poking up over my shoulder.
But that would be great. Like, why is that? How is this a problem? I don't understand how this is even remotely a problem. That sounds perfect. I think he would love that. Be like, yes, I have Behemoth X sitting over my shoulder. He's keeping well. That's like when people have like the little, you know, like when I used to have the doll behind me that I would talk to occasionally.
Oh, Atropa wanted to know what I saw. Obviously, it's not going to be something you can express in words, but the closest thing to it is there's this chapter in one of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books where they talk about the thing called the total perspective vortex. And the total perspective vortex is the most awful form of torture and capital punishment ever known in the universe, because what it does is it puts you in a little booth and it does this fancy science to extrapolate the position of every other object in the universe. And in one moment in that booth, it shows you the entire universe. And on an infinitesimal dot, on an infinitesimal dot, on an infinitesimal dot is a little tiny arrow that says, you are here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to completely shatter your soul. But when Zephod Beeblebrox gets put through it, he just comes walking out the other side, and the executioners are like, the hell is wrong with you, man? It says, it already told me what I already know. Zephod Beeblebrox. Yeah.
Well, that's a direct ripoff, probably, whether they meant to be or not. Speaking of ripoffs, of that, I forget which Zen master it was that said, when death comes for me, let it not find me unannihilated. You know, it is that, you know, and I feel the same way. When I see myself dying, however it happens, I hope that it doesn't find me in a state where I am so attached to life that it really fucking hurts when I go out the door. I hope it's just like I'm walking out the door and I look back, flick the lights, and keep going. That's basically what I want. And I have a feeling it will be, simply for the fact that it's the dying that sucks. Death isn't a problem.
Yes.
And I have a feeling it will be, because in those out-of-body adventures that I've had, those disassociative trips, if you want to put it that way, when I forget that I'm me, in other words, I've had those moments where I'm sitting here in whatever experience I'm having, going, wait a minute, who am I? I have no fucking clue. Like total amnesia of D.H. Thorne, of Dan, of my wife, my family, my life, all gone. Completely just doesn't matter. It is like death. It is like I am just a conscious, not even a point. I am consciousness fixated on something, and I am not a person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just, there's no pain, there's no sorrow, there's no alarm. You don't go, I died. You don't even know you're dead. You don't even know it's happened. You're just the universe. Let's see it all. And that you are here thing doesn't stay there. It goes here, 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 here,
Mm-hmm.
and it just, as that expands, darkness falls until even darkness is gone. And then there is just inexplainable awareness, aware of itself, in a field of awareness, awareing of itself. And the whole concept of thing, form, stuff, and everything just gone.
And it's funny because I'm just sort of getting this now. I didn't understand it at the time, but it was this feeling of being, at the same time, being very, very small in comparison to everything else, but at the same time feeling like you're the center of it. And what I was experiencing, because I'm remembering the rest of the chapter, and this is a minor spoiler, the reason it didn't work on him is because he wasn't in the regular universe. He was in a pocket universe that had been constructed just for him.
Oh, okay.
And
hey, but that's kind of like all our own. Look, I love when the metaphors in sci-fi and fantasy turn out to be kind of true in their own little twisted way, because if you think about it, every one of us is in our own little pocket dimension. We're all the center of the universe that we live in.
There you go. It's that sense of, again, sort of an illustration of the two of us, which is arriving at the same point from two completely different angles, which is it was this feeling of, not feeling, gnosis, knowledge.
Hey, gnosis is a big subject. I mean, in my current book, again, which will probably never get published, I'm just going to admit it's probably never coming out. This chapter on gnosis is probably, it's one I just wrote, and I don't know if I like the way I wrote it, but I like the principles that I stated. The way that I define gnosis is the truest knowledge that you can have. That is to say, it is not factual. It is not a collection of data. It is not an idea that you hold. It's not a belief. It's not faith. It's none of those things. And it is only possible in the absolute moment of consciousness. Now, gnosis is, we use the word knowledge, but when we're talking about knowledge, it's better to use the word knowing, not knowledge as in past tense or knowledge as a possessive or anything like that. It is a knowing. But when we're talking about knowing, that sounds like consciousness, but gnosis is not just consciousness. Consciousness has an experience of gnosis, but gnosis is a knowing. It is a realization knowing. So, for example, if I were to play music for you, hearing the music but not recognizing it as music, just hearing noise, that's consciousness. I'm conscious of the noise. Knowing it's a song that you recognize, bang, that's gnosis. Like that it's not that you know what song it is. It is just realization. It is just pure, I get it.
I would approach it from this perspective of someone who has never heard music. I can sit them down in a classroom and I can teach them all the music theory in the world. But until they have heard it, they do not have gnosis of music. Correct.
That's why I often use the rainbow analogy or the sunset analogy. I say, I can talk to you all day long about what you are, but until you see it, you don't know. And that's gnosis, is seeing. But seeing it is not enough, because I can point you at a sunset. If you've never seen, so let's take this analogy all the way to its absolute absurdum that we can go. Imagine a person who has lived their whole life with their eyes closed and they've never seen anything. Their eyes, I guess, still function. We've tested it. We know they function. I'm just giving you the hypothetical, like Plato's cave. Their eyes, we know, still function, but they've never opened their eyes and they've never seen a sunset at the very least. They've never seen a picture of it, nothing. And we start explaining what a sunset is to them. They've never seen one. So we say, okay, you're going to see the horizon and then this little ball. You imagine the best explanation you can imagine. That will never cause the person to see a sunset. Not just because it's inaccurate. I want to interject something here. It's not just because whatever they imagine isn't accurate. It's because they're just still not seeing a sunset. They're just seeing an imaginary, it's not truth, right? The truth of the sunset can only be seen with your eyes in the moment of the sunset. And you never see the same sunset twice. No two people see the same sunset. So I'm going to sit there with this person. So instead of trying to explain the sunset to you, which is what most Western philosophy does, I'm going to try an Eastern approach. And I'm going to say, come here, follow me, kid. And we're going to go sit and we're going to face, maybe we're on the West Coast to make it easy for ourselves. We're going to sit on the West Coast, California. We're going to hang with Fleshy and we're going to look out over the ocean. And I'm going to be like, hey, it's about time. I want to show you something. You never seen a sunset, have you? No, what's a sunset? Come on with me. We're going to go sit and look. And we're going to look west. Now, as that sun sets, are they going to recognize that it's a sunset if they don't know what it is? So they can see the sunset, but there's a good chance that they will look at it and not know it's a sunset. You're going to have to say that's a sunset. for it to click.
Mm-hmm.
So just observing the truth is not enough. There must be a recognition of the truth for it to be gnosis. Mm-hmm. True gnosis is not just conscious experience. That's too lazy. That's not it yet either. True gnosis is I see the sunset and I know that that's what it is. Now, the problem with this analogy is we're still talking about materialistic subjects. What we're talking about is ineffable. We can't, yes. I can't tell you what it is so that you recognize it.
The definition of gnosis is itself something that can only be gnosed. It can't be. Exactly. My definition of gnosis is that thing which cannot be taught. It can only be directly experienced.
Yep.
And all the books about magic or anything else are only there to get you to the point where you can have the experience of the gnosis and then know what to do next.
Yes.
So in that sense, every single book about magic that's ever been written is Magic 101.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm going to tell you another secret, okay? There is no Magic 102. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? Simple. Once you get to that point and see that, now you got to do it again and again and again and again. And each time you do it, you've got to learn to integrate what you found in that gnosis over and over until your life begins to not just resonate, but all conflict between the truth and your ego disappears, barring maybe just that little, I'm here right now, and just leave it at that.
Now, the books and
so it's all about it.
Sorry.
So I was going to say, so a good 101 book is actually all of the books you need because it's going, and when I say book, I don't really mean a book, I mean teaching. A good 101 lesson doesn't just teach you to see it, it then teaches you how to integrate it because everything you're doing to see it must then be repeated after you've seen it to integrate it, if you're doing it right. So you may start off with, okay, the way I like to do it is you begin with apophatic or neti contemplation. So you must rationally be open. In other words, you've got to have all of your rational arguments that say this is impossible. You've got to get enough of them to get deconstructed for you so that they're no longer standing in the way. You might have a few, but you got to get the biggest ones out of the way. Part of doing that is just meditation too. So part of apophatic contemplation is also parts of meditation. And you do meditation while you're doing the contemplation. But that meditation, when you have contemplated yourself out of your delusions, that meditation is no longer just a nice way to relax. That's a doorway into, it's a psychedelic trip waiting to happen. Once you are completely neti your way into no longer standing in the way of the truth, meditation is no longer just a piece of a moment of peace. You realize that peace is way more than you think it is. It's not just relaxation peace. That is God. That peace, that serenity. Now you're like, oh shit. So anyway, as you're doing that, different traditions stop with just those 2 or 3 things. But you can also incorporate theurgy and thaumaturgy. My system includes both of those because those are a form of Western yoga to me. Those are a form of Tantra to me. Those are a way to, people think that magic changes reality. All it does in its actuality, in my experience, again, some people will differ, but I'm going to explain why they differ. All it really does is as you're practicing it, your ego's aligning more with the truth. If it's being done as part of a bigger process. If it's just, like Eddie said earlier, the gimmies, if you're just doing magic to get a girlfriend and some money, you may have that experience. I'm not saying you won't, but it is just a superficial experience that you're having. You were always going to get the girl. You were always going to have that money. It's just, you did a ritual too. And people say, well, that means magic doesn't work. I didn't say that. I'm saying magic isn't what you think it is. You've been sold a pig in a poke. You've been sold this magic bean stew. Okay. But you put the magic bean stew though. You did all this. This is all you doing it. So unfortunately, you can't live in that state as a mortal being. You can't walk around, at least I can't, going, I'm making the sun rise right now and I'm doing, because that's unhealthy too. That's attachment too. You've got, as Crowley said, to accept, not do, accept. And through that acceptance, you recognize the doer, which is you. Well, anyway, so you do all these things. You do thaumaturgy, you do theurgy, you do these things almost as if you're challenging God to prove himself or herself or itself. Like, I'm going to do this ritual, and if I'm really God, it'll work. That's, again, the level 1 understanding. The higher level understanding is, I'm going to do this ritual because I think that's what my will is. And if it happens, then I know it was my will. And if it doesn't happen, then I know it wasn't. And if it was my will, miracles are possible. It's not that miracles aren't possible. When I say magic doesn't do what you think it does, I mean, it's not a toy, it's not a vending machine, it's not a genie that grants wishes. But miracles do happen. What's a miracle? Look up the definition. It doesn't mean what you think it means. Miracle doesn't mean it's a supernatural thing that bends the laws of nature. That's never what miracle ever meant. That's what fantasy tells us, and skeptics tell us that miracles don't mean the laws of nature were broken. Miracles are a wonder. They are a whoa. That's it. And you can have a whoa just looking at the stars at night.
That's literally the term in the New Testament, signs and wonders.
Yeah.
It is a sign that God is real, and it makes you go, whoa.
Yep. And that the thing is that sometimes the miracles take the form of, I did a ritual and the shit I did the ritual for happened. But that doesn't mean the ritual caused it. The ritual just revealed it. It just puts you on a path to recognizing it. That's all it did. So magic and sorcery are really just vehicles or a spotlight, or however you want to analogize it, that allows you to recognize the synchronistic nature of miracle. We all have heard that when you're on the right track, synchronicity happens a lot. The last week or two has just been one after the other for me. Coincidence, eerie, spooky, meaningful coincidence after eerie, spooky, meaningful coincidence. I think a thought and it shows up on TV, shit like that. And my wife's noticed too, because we both had it a lot lately, which means I must be on a trend. I must be on the right track, and I got to keep going, right? So guess what? Doing rituals is the same thing. Now, you don't have to do any specific kind of ritual. You don't have to do any kind of specific spells. It's just that some have been developed as a kind of psychological, spiritual technology that, at least for the people who created it and their culture, was relevant. This is why if you look at the magic from Japan, there'll be some similarities, but the specifics will be very different. However, the overall shape of what magic is exactly the same. If you really look, like, go get a copy. I think the Bansen Shukai has some of this in it. It's the ninja manual. I think that has spells in it. I don't remember if it's that or the Ninpaiden or which one, but some of them actually have ninja spells in there. And if you look at it, the symbols are completely different. The meaning of the different things is completely different. But if you look at those versus like some hedge magic, Wicca shit, jar spells, it's exactly the fucking same. It's just different. It's just different symbols. It's exactly the same process, the same shape, the same point. Why? Well, the superstitious believer is going to say because those objects have power and they're symbolically powerful. Wrong. They are better understood. It's not that they don't connect to higher enigmas. That is true. That the concept of correspondence, people misunderstand. They think that their idea of correspondence is if I take this voodoo doll and stab it, and if it's a good correspondence to the person, they'll feel it because they correspond, like spooky action at a distance. No, it is that the voodoo doll and the person are inspired by the same archetypal enigma. That's the correspondence. So what the voodoo doll does is it allows you to go to that archetype specifically that is connected to both precipitate reflected things. And if you can shift your perception of that archetype, you can shift to a reality where you've manipulated that, or you're going to feel like you manipulated the archetype. It's a little complicated, but what I'm getting at is, look, fire means the same thing to every culture. The sun means the same thing. So there's some universal concepts in human consider. That doesn't mean there's no variation. You know, like two cultures will look at snakes a little differently, especially like Europeans look at snakes like they're all evil. You go to Asia, snakes are wonderful. You go to Egypt, snakes are cool. Something about Europeans, we fear snakes for whatever reason. So we don't see them as life force or something. One might even argue that the reason we don't is because the powers that be taught us to fear them instead of seeing them as a symbol of life, because they leave no trace, and they go and they burrow into things, and they live inside mounds, and they put life. The symbolism of the serpent is pretty impressive, actually, if you look it up. But is it that snakes are magical? No, they just remind us as fallen beings, if you want to put it that way, to look back at the ideals that inspire them. And I'm talking too much. I'm ranting. I should let Eddie say something. But yeah, I'm going to just shut up. Putting Eddie on the spot.
Oh shit! I just lost it. God damn it. Well, so to get with the man, there's a chair analogy that I like to use, and I know you've heard it before, but I think it's worth doing on the gnosis point, which is because there is a middle stage here that gets missed a lot, and I only figured this out because I had the benefit of being beaten over the head with Soren Kierkegaard in seminary, which is he talks about the big leap. He was the first existentialist. Yes, existentialism was originally a Christian thing. And he talks about you leap from nothing into nothing. And you'll hit something, but you actually hit it, you don't know. So I like to talk about the chair analogy. And this is how I approach things like gnosis things, is I can sit there. I'm going to sit you down. I'm going to put a chair in front of you. I'm going to explain everything about how and why that chair is going to hold you up. But until you actually sit your ass down in that chair, you aren't going to know what's going to hold you up. And the important part here, this is the Soren Kierkegaard part, faith. Faith is the thing that exists at the moment between when you have reached the point of no return, where no matter what you do, you can't stand back up, right? But your ass hasn't hit the seat yet, right? So it's that, well, I guess I'm going to find out if it's going to hold me up or not, right? But then when you sit and it holds you up, right? That's gnosis. Like, oh, right. But the key is that if I didn't have that moment, that time where I sat you down and explained to you how the chair works, then it's not gnosis again. It's just a random experience, right? Mm-hmm. It's something that happens both up here and down in here and down in your guts. It's all three of those things, right? It's intellectual knowledge coupled with an emotional belief, a buy-in to it, coupled with that visceral gut level, I have experienced this and I know it to be the case. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's how magic works. Because the thing is that where I see people keep trying to learn magic and never be able to get it to work, it's because they're missing one or more of those components, right?
Yeah.
They think,
and interestingly, a newbie, because a newbie is operating purely on what-ifism or faith on some level, they're more open to that whoa. Whereas, heaven forbid you've actually succeeded a few times, all of a sudden it's a machine that's supposed to work a certain way, and that whole whoa experience takes a shit. And that's why you see so much burnout, myself included, in, we'll even say, high-level magicians. I bet you Crowley sat there. It's probably the reason he was fucking high off his ass, because at some point, the woe was over. And he's like, well, the only woe left is to fucking inject the sauce. And that's it. Because the woe was over. Because now he was like, I'm fucking God. Fuck it. Let's be honest. Look at, it takes a lot. That actually tells me that he was still attached, though. That's all that tells me. Probably. Because maybe I'm attached.
Or he was so unattached or
that he didn't care.
He didn't care.
He just didn't care. That's a good point too. It could be either one of those. Okay.
The Zen monk who smokes.
The Zen monk who's like, fuck it, it's gonna kill me. I'm gonna enjoy it. Yeah. Look, we all, if you're a smoker, and especially if you're Gen X smoker, we all had that phase of, I don't care if I die, fuck it. Like, I'm smoking because I want to. All right, so yeah, I think I like your version better than what I said. Maybe he wasn't attached. Maybe it was better to say maybe he wasn't. But yeah, at some point you run out of the woes, and you're just, fuck it, I'm just gonna have fun. I would like to use another analogy on you guys too, by the way. So when we talk about different schools of magic, when I say schools, I mean cultural metaphors of magic, really. Because that's really all we're talking about. When you compare different traditions, you're really just talking about different cultures' perspective on what it should look like. It's all made up. Yes, some have very heavy symbolism that's attached to Pythagoras and the ancients and all. Cool, that makes it more real for you. That doesn't mean it is more real. It just means that in your hierarchy of reality, the fact that it's ancient and points to something mysterious, or you can prove it with math somehow in your mind, that makes it more real. It's just your way of rationalizing it to have faith in it, shall we say. Not that I like faith, by the way, but in Eddie's explanation of faith is what I'm saying. It's the explanation that lets you take the risk on sitting on the chair. Okay, so every culture's got their way of doing this. What I'm going to suggest to you is think of it like different styles of music. If we are being sincerely honest about things, we recognize that every genre of music has the capacity to invoke or evoke in the listener the emotions that any other form of music does, with a few exceptions, obviously. Like, yes, something that's just pure anger, hate music might be a little harder to get to the love or the other emotions, but they all are a way to reach that emotional or conceptual or daydream truth. So if you listen to, say, rap versus heavy metal, they can both put you in some very similar places. If you jive, if you vibe, if you resonate with that kind of music. If you don't, it's just noise. So for me, for example, some of Eddie's favorite forms of magic are noise to me. I don't like them. Like, people are like, Thorne's anti-Semitic because he doesn't like Kabbalah. No, in fact, I understand that Kabbalah doesn't have to be attached to that anyway, and has nothing to do with Semitism to me. It's literally, it just doesn't appeal to me. I look at it and go, it's like country music to me. It's not because of its point of origin, because I've seen some people saying that, not about me, but, oh, you don't like Kabbalah? Why are you anti-Semitic? I've seen that statement being made. That's insane, by the way. Anybody who says that's crazy. But that does get, I've seen that thrown around. Like, oh, why won't you mess with Kabbalah? Are you? No, it's because I literally, when I look at it, I just go, it's not for, now maybe that'll change. Maybe in 5 years, I'll be like, okay, the only piece I'm missing is what Kabbalah has. I better go back and reintegrate that, because I've read all about it in the past. Like when I was a young kid, I read about it. But it just doesn't, same thing with Christianity, right? It's no different, but you can use the fucking Bible as a spell book if you know what you're doing. Many folk magicians of America do so. What do you think, what, Santeria, voodoo, folk magic from the Appalachians? They use the Bible. Psalm 23 is like the most powerful magic spell there is,
Yeah.
And this is so what I'm trying to say here is that not every tradition is going to work for you, because it doesn't always click for you. For me, I need that spooky Lovecraftian, Necronomicon, Slayer heavy metal, Eddie from Stranger Things 4 vibe for me to really, really go like all the way. And Jedi stuff and Zen shit, like all of that kind of stuff. That's the vibes that really work for me. Whereas somebody else, that won't work for them at all. They think it's silly, or it's just, how would this work? It's just meditation or something. So everybody's got a different way, just like each one of these different types of music can inspire you into feeling the thing you want. Now, why does this work? Very simple, because they're all pointing to the same ultimate ideal forms or archetypes or enigmas, whatever they are. So this is why I say a sad song from one culture barring something you need to hear the words and understand, I mean, just the musical notes, a sad song in one culture is, with few exceptions, recognized as a sad song in another culture, unless it requires an understanding of the language. In other words, if it's just the instrumental part, you know, everyone knows that is sad. Nobody needs to be taught that. We're born with that. That's actually Plato's argument, although he used a different example. That's kind of Plato's argument for the idea of ideal forms in the first place, is that we're born knowing these things. Not even through instinct. It's part of the collective conscious, as Jung would say. We're born knowing these things, so the ideal forms are things you're born knowing, but not necessarily how they manifest in this life. We all intuitively know what a perfect circle is, but we don't connect that knowledge with the manifested version of it till someone helps us out and says, that's a circle, by the way. But we understand the circle because we're born knowing what it is. That's a powerful argument. So all of these different styles of magic point to the same, whatever you want to call them, enigmas, ideal forms, archetypes, planetary energies, whatever you like to use as your archetypal reference point. They all point to the same things, all of them. So sure, Kabbalah has the 10 different Sephirah. Well, Gnosticism has a whole bunch of aeons, which can be mapped similarly. They're different, but they're a similar concept. To the point where it's obvious they're all pointing at the same things. So I guess what I'm saying is, people go like, Thorne, what's the best spell to do X? Well, the one that works, the one that you feel is right. There's literally no better spell than the one you make up once you understand the principles at work. Chaos magic in a nutshell. True chaos magic, not Osmond Spare, which isn't wrong. It's just not. That's just one dimension of it. Real chaos magic is literally, I can do magic with a piece of chewing gum and a piece of string like MacGyver, because I can connect it symbolically to what I want.
I wanted to clarify a couple of things for the chat room, and then also just for the sake of clarification, is the first one is, as I have talked about before, although I think it might not have been on the stream, there's like 3 different Kabbalahs.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. That's an important thing to say, because I know when I said the thing about Jewish stuff, you're like, I saw you melt for a second, because I know that everybody,
nobody follows this strictly. I need to be better at it. But in the 60s, because of this, magicians came up with a way of differentiating between the 3. And the 3 are, there's Jewish Kabbalah, there's Christian Kabbalah, and then there's Hermetic Kabbalah, or magical Kabbalah. And Kabbalah with a K should really only be used to describe Jewish Kabbalah, which magical Kabbalah and Christian Kabbalah are like tiny little pieces of that have been extracted. So when you say Kabbalah to a rabbi or an Orthodox Jew,
you better know all about the Torah and all about
he's thinking literally of
the Zohar,
bookcases full of books.
Yep.
When a Christian says Kabbalah, he's thinking about like a set of books about that big. Yep. And he's doing kind of what they're doing, but a much more simplified version with Greek instead of Hebrew. When we talk about, and Christian Kabbalah is properly spelled with a C, right? Mm-hmm. Hermetic or magical Kabbalah is spelled with a Q. And that is literally all taken from like the introduction to the very first volume.
Yeah. But this is my problem with it, right? To me, I guess my teeth were cut on Zen shit, which is very, I don't want to say austere. That's the wrong word, but it's very direct, simple, and just don't worry about it. Just roll with it. Just accept instead of, you know. So for me, when I go into this stuff, it's like, why do you gotta, I know that there's lessons here, but it's like, I feel like you get lost in the weeds real easy with this, you know, you know, and it seems very, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying it's not good for you. No. I'm just saying for some of us,
Oh, no,
especially
yeah, no.
with ADD, it ain't
Yeah.
the thing, man. It ain't the way to go if you got ADD.
And I was that way for a long time too, because it was like, this is incredibly fucking complex. And then Poker Onion was the one who finally explained it to me
Gotta
on
love me
his
some Poker
podcast
Onion.
in a way that made sense, because it's a filing cabinet. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a way of taking magical and mystical experiences and saying, all right, all these are related to this thing, and we're going to put them here. And all of them
let's
related to
be
this
clear.
thing, and we're going to put them here. So
Do
that
you
we
like
can
the
have
tarot?
Yeah.
You like Kabbalah then?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
It's rooted in the Torah, tarot, Torah. Hello, it's literally rooted in Kabbalah, and it's that doesn't make it less valid. I love the tarot. I don't use it all the time. What I use the tarot for is spell casting more than I do reading. I don't like using it for reading. I like going, I want the energies of these cards to hit this, or I want to use them as a gateway to see this. I don't like to use them as what's going to happen next week or what's my big problem inside. I got other ways of doing that. Honestly, the cards are just half the time I'm too busy trying to understand the card, and I already know what I'm trying to understand. Like I prefer a pendulum or I Ching, and you can use I Ching the same. You can cast a spell with an I Ching hexagram. You can use it. In fact, some people would argue that the I Ching's better because it's actually more general. But actually, I think they work well together. Believe it or not, I don't see them as competing at all. But it's I like the etherealness of the I Ching. Your intuition really plays a heavy role with I Ching, because when you do an I Ching reading, words like, here's the beauty of I Ching. You don't need to memorize shit. Anybody who does an I Ching reading, or anybody who could, anybody who tells you like you got to memorize I Ching to do it, there's too much to memorize, dude. I'm telling you, you're never going to memorize I Ching. It's just, maybe somebody does, like a great gray-haired old 90-year-old dude, but the average person using I Ching, you're supposed to use the book. Because when you're using the book, you're supposed to be reading that, and like words will pop out at you. Go, oh, that's the one I needed to see. It's not just the text, it's also the pieces of the text. That's why you have the changing lines too. There's so many layers there. Like, again, it's the same thing with tarot. You're not supposed to just interpret the tarot literally. You're supposed to, my favorite way of using tarot is to say, to hell with this book, throw it out the window and look at the card. That's why I don't like cards that are just numbers. I like looking at the card. The pictures tell me more than anything the text would.
This is why for some things, I use tarot. For some things I use runes, because runes are very much about, like, it takes a little bit of work. You have to grok them, and each one of them individually. But once you have that, then it's like, it's there's whatever Anglo-Saxon rune poem versus the Old Norse rune poem says about it, that sort of thing. But it's more, it's gut. It's totally gut.
It's very gut. I do like the runes. Don't be wrong. I mean, there's also that hipster side of me that goes, I don't want to use runes because everybody's using runes. I don't want to use tarot because everybody uses tarot. And I don't want to use it. I want to make up my own. That's a flaw of mine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not an objective thing. It's a personal flaw.
That's actually an exercise that the IoT used to make people go through. The big Chaos Magic organization is like your second task of one of the degrees in the IoT is you have to invent from scratch your own divination system and get it to work.
Interesting. I like that. It's almost like my whole, you have to create your own magical alphabet as an exercise is a good idea too.
That's another one that they have. That's like the first exercise.
Interesting.
But the way they phrase it is very interesting, which is using whatever tokens you want, build a model of the universe, and now use that as a form of divination. The reason divination works is that Pete Carroll's view, and I tend to agree with them, is that all divination is a form of geomancy, right? It's a model. It's a model, and you're looking at the model to try to figure out what's going to happen or what is happening or has happened.
It makes sense. It's kind of like the times tables. If you see two times 2, it's going to be 4. It's a little bit like that. And what I do like about the tarot is, look, all of these different divination systems are used best when aimed in the right part of yourself or the world or direction. So it can be a little hard to like really say where each one sits exactly, because they do overlap a lot. But the tarot, especially the first, especially the major arcana, that's really about, stages of initiation, or stages of enlightenment, or stages of realization, or stages of that's really what it's all about. Each one of those cards is a usually they happen in sequence, but you can jump around too. Don't think that it's always in sequence. But optimally, it generally follows that flow, and it is an archetype of enlightenment. You start off as the Fool, and you work your way up. You need a magician to inspire you. You just go through the whole thing, and you end up at the very end as the World. And then between the World and the Fool, that's it. You become the Fool again, because the Fool, the true Fool, is the World, and the World is the Fool. They're kind of the back and front. You should think of the Fool card and the World card as the same card, just two different sides of the same card, and everything in between is just the cycle of samsara getting there. Like the face side is the Fool and the back side is the World. And
dost thou know why the major arcana work that way?
Me personally, I know it's based through the alphabet or not the alphabet, but the Hebrew, but I don't know. Maybe.
Because the correspondences, the symbolism on the major arcana is the symbolism of the paths, which means on the tree, which means that they are, each of them is a picture of a transition from one state to another state.
Now I like the Sephiroth again. Now I get it. The Sephiroth. I got to get into the Tree of Life now. Thank you, Eddie. You just gave me a reason to look at it again.
Although interestingly, the thing that's going to screw with you when you do it the first time is that the way you actually are supposed to experience the path of initiation is backwards. You start at the World and you go back to the Fool. And then that's also the reason why it loops, is because of the Kabbalistic idea that every part of the tree contains the entire tree.
It's a microcosm. Yeah.
Right. It's a hologram that goes all the way up and all the way down.
And that is accurate in my opinion, in every form of mysticism.
Yes.
Because in every form of mysticism,
that's the universal truth that is being expressed in a specific symbolic way in this system.
Plato would say, for example, every ideal form is a microcosm of the whole, but it's a certain perspective of the microcosm, of the macrocosm of the whole. It's like Indra's web, okay? Every single dewdrop on Indra's web reflects the whole thing, but it's still unique because it's in a unique place in that whole thing. So it contains a microcosm of the whole as a relationship. Now I want to hit you with a heavy thought. This might be, for some of you, one of the heaviest thoughts you've ever had in your life. From a materialistic perspective, your brain sits in a microcosmic relationship to the entire seen and unseen universe. Because something way out, I'm talking beyond the observable universe, that was connected to you during the Big Bang. At one point, it was all one thing, remember? Like, materialistically speaking, one thing. That led to this brain that you have. So your brain is a product of something you could never, ever imagine or see an infinite number of light years that way. To the point where whatever caused that to be, caused you to be. The highest in the hierarchy of causality in the material sense. It also applies to certain idealistic ideas. This is Neoplatonism in a nutshell. Why do you think like the monad and the whole thing that Neoplatonism says is basically the Big Bang till now in a lot of ways, by the way? There's a lot of similarity. So this brain that you have is a microcosm of the whole. And I say that because everything that this brain experiences from when it forms to when it disintegrates is in relationship to the whole. There is a reflection of the whole in this. You literally could, now science might dispute this because they would say, well, we don't have the ability to know this because there is a limit to our ability to sense it. So true. But if we could see with the eyes of God, so to speak, if we had perfect knowledge, which science is always on the quest for, because they know with perfect knowledge, they can do anything. With perfect knowledge, you could see how every particle in your brain is the result of a particle, an infinite number of space dots that way. And not just that, But that little particle is also why that's that way over there. One could argue that the secret to spooky action at a distance is to remove the temporality of the whole equation and realize that they are connected intrinsically through whatever medium, but you remove the time dimension, it suddenly makes perfect sense. You don't have to worry about traveling the distance. They are always connected. So your brain, whatever it is in relationship to the whole, and it is a microcosm of the whole. My dick, going for quote time, my dick is a microcosm of the universe. Put that in the quotes, by the way.
This is also, so this is the thing people miss about astrology.
CGA, what's up, brother? Sorry, Eddie, go ahead.
Yeah. The thing that people miss about astrology is that it's not about the physical balls of rock and gas that are flying around up there. The fact that Mercury, is sitting in Gatorade doesn't cause things, doesn't do anything. It's just that the same forces, the same equation, if we're going to use the science thing, because physicists are desperate to find that one equation, that one formula that will explain everything. The same formula that made that ball of rock and put it where it is on the period that it is the same thing that formed me and you and the universe and everything we see. Right? It's all a big fractal of the same simple thing happening over and over and over again.
I like to use the analogy of the procedurally generated video game.
Yes.
So your mind could be equated a little bit, or the divine mind could be equated to the CPU of a computer, which is processing a seed number through a set of algorithmic logos that produces this. So when God sits here and looks this way, it's looking through this algorithm, shall we say, or this program, and it looks at the whole seed and it goes, that looks like a mountain, but only you're going to see a mountain. A cat might see who knows what the fuck. An alien from Zabelflax 12 will be like, no, that's a space nipple. It's gonna be completely different for everything. This is probably one reason why aliens don't talk to us, because we don't know that we're talking. We don't know. We're so busy going, it's going to be like something we expect, that the trees could be talking to us going, why don't they fucking stand us? But when they talk, it's like the Ents from Lord of the Rings. They just talk so slow, we don't pick up on. Maybe it takes 6 days for them to say one word. You wouldn't know.
I actually just read a really good science fiction novel. We won't talk about it on the air because otherwise we'll be here all night. On the Fermi paradox of, if the universe is full of life, why don't we hear anybody speaking? And the answer is horrifying.
You're not talking about that, what's his name? I think he's Japanese or Chinese, the authors of...
Yeah, Three Body Problem.
Yeah. What is it? The body
problem.
Yeah, the mind body problem. I have to read those. I saw synopsises and it didn't appeal to me. It seems like
it didn't me either, but then I finally broke down and used an Audible to get the audiobook.
Gotcha.
And
well,
the only problem I have with it is that because it is Chinese, all of the names are in Chinese, and just because that's not my culture, it's hard for me to keep these people separated sometimes. So pay really close attention to the names.
Gotcha. There was, I don't know if it was in the same universe or what, there was a science fiction story where Earth is under siege by these aliens that are not conscious. They are literally just it's not just like AI that's like a program. They are literally just causality. They're literally just, so when they're attacking, it's not because they see us and go, we have to attack you. It's literally just all like cause and effect. They're not living things. They're just the universe happening to you.
That is not this, but I know that, and I can't remember what the title of that
I'll have to find it, because it was a cool thought, because I realized while listening to that thought, that's us. That is what materialism says we are. Materialism says that's what we are. What I find really obnoxious about, so I'm going to give you guys a little clue if I haven't given it to you before. Maybe Eddie can back me up, or maybe he'll disagree. My thinking is that a long time ago, I like to call them the hidden masters, but it's just a euphemism. The hidden masters figured out the secrets of the universe as a collective, not just as individuals who went, poof, I see myself. They figured it all out. And some of them decided, in spite of that, to not only keep it to themselves, but to have humanity, because human beings are barely a step above animals on average anyway, to keep humanity in the dark about it. So what they did was they, over periods of the last 2,000 or 3,000 years, I'm going to say 1,500, just to give it a weird sounding number. Over the period of the last 1,500 years, probably much longer than that, they steered human civilization away from a Platonic or mystical or idealistic kind of idea of reality towards not just Aristotelian. Aristotelian's he's nothing wrong with Aristotle. He's brilliant. Like, a lot of what he did is important, but they steered it away from that Platonic, everything is mind, everything is consciousness, everything is that, towards the cult of bumping particles, numbers, and material. And they did that so that they can, by keeping you in the dark from that, they can get you to build pyramids. They can get you to do whatever they want.
Yep.
And so I know this is true now. Like, it's not even like when I say like there's not a lot of things that you can know. True. This is not something I can know in that way. But on the magnitude of things that I believe that I can't prove, this is really high on the list. And I know this because there is a very strong cultural push. So when you look at the people who shape our society, the pundits, the media, movies, television, the scientismists, they push really hard, not just for like humanitarian secularism, which by itself is an innocent kind of thought. I have no problem with that. But they push us towards a dead universe.
Yes.
When I say dead, I don't mean life doesn't exist. No, I mean life is just a pile of shit bumping together.
Yep.
That life has no meaning. They are pointing us towards a dead universe. People like Neil deGrasse Tyson really tick me off because his mentor was Carl Sagan, which was not doing it. When you listen to Carl, you can argue Carl Sagan was a dick and he was a liberal and he was a this. You can have all kinds of reasons to hate Carl Sagan. One thing he was not was dead. He did not encourage you to spiritual yes, he was an atheist. Yeah, actually, he never said he was an atheist, to be clear. I don't think he did. He actually just never disclosed a belief in anything. But listen to the fucker talk. He didn't talk like someone who was spiritually dead. He was talking like a deist or a pantheist or a because pantheism is actually still agreeable to skepticism. It's not so scientific. Like, you have dogmatic skeptics who say all of that's bullshit, but the more reasonable skeptics go, pantheism is still very likely, if not possible, and so is deism. They admit that it's not out of the, like, they admit it's possible. Okay.
Panpsychism is also very, very popular in cosmology at the moment because there's a way of understanding the very early state of the universe that makes perfect sense if you accept the conceit that all of the things interacting with each other are conscious and aware and have a desire to interact in certain ways. They want, the reason electrons and protons are attracted to each other is because they want to be. Right.
Yeah, I don't really, here's my problem with panpsychism. It's like they're catching up. You know, I'm saying they're one day that, so I like, what's his name? Donald Hoffman. I think it's Donald Hoffman. He's like one of the more open panpsych guys. And he's often seen with the science and non-duality crowd for a good reason. Okay. Because he has independently, through a more materialist approach, verified a lot of the things that non-dualists, monists, and related mystics say. So he's like, he gets hugs from, you know, the people like me. I got no beef with him, but because he is, I guess, an empiricist or a materialist or whatever he is, he's still working up. Like, he hasn't disobjectified. He hasn't done the ayahuasca trip. He hasn't meditated his brain out. He's still coming at this from the left brain side of things. He's analyzing his way there. He's still going through the contemplative phase. And in so doing, he's created a really good concept, but it's not wrong per se. Like, everything he says may be factually true, but it's final, where it ends up, where it lands, is not the truth. It only goes so far. It's like the truth is there on the horizon. He gets you like, you know, a couple 100 feet in the right direction. This idea that consciousness is another form of energy or matter, or some part of the substrate of what space and time is, or something, as a material object, because material itself is a concept. Our whole idea of material is a form. It's an idea. It's not a real thing. You know, what makes something substantial versus ideal? What is the difference between something substantial and ideal? You know what it is? It feels hard. That's literally it. It has nothing to do with anything. In other words, physical reality is based entirely, not even like mostly, I mean, implicitly, there is no other thing it's based on. It is based on what we can, at the end of the day, either you can extrapolate from here, but it always begins with what you can taste, touch, feel, sense, feel, smell, see, etc. It's always based on what it looks like. And you can take that and then use a priori and get all the way to the shit you can't see. Yes, but materialism is based on the hard that you can feel. But guess what they figured out after following that rainbow to its pot of gold at the end is an illusion. Even they know that now. When you have these hard skeptic materialists saying reality is this matter and this energy and shit, so you're saying they're ideal forms then that manifest in consciousness as matter through sensation, through the sensual. So Plato was right, is what you're saying, just not in so many words, because you don't want to ever risk your hegemony of scientism. You don't ever want to do that, because you don't want people to start realizing that their imagination's more than just their imagination. You don't want that.
Yeah, my complaint with them has always been that sort of person is on the one hand, they shit all over philosophers, but on the other hand, they act like you're being a jerk for asking them to empirically verify empiricism.
Yeah, that is the first assumption. So I've said before, now that the list may be different for everybody. My list, there's 4 things I know, and really there's only one thing I know, but there's 4 things that I know. I exist. I know I exist because I'm conscious of it. I know I'm conscious because I'm having experiences, and I know I'm having experiences. Everything else, the 4th thing that I know is I don't know anything else. Everything else is a form of assumption based on those first 3. So everything that I see in reality is an assumption. In other words, it's not, the seeing is reality. So when I say to you that this is an illusion, the illusion is reality. I'm just saying that reality is illusory. I'm not saying that there's no reality at all. And I'm not saying that this doesn't exist. I'm saying that what it looks like is an illusion. Illusion is part of reality, period. And you can clarify that illusion so it's really accurate, or you can make it really delusional and not get it. The 4th thing I'm saying is where materialism picks up. And I'm not saying that materialism is a bad philosophy. It's just not meant to be your whole philosophy. Right. It's meant to be your operating system in this incarnate sense. It is not meant to be the whole show.
It is a useful framework for doing science. But so I don't,
like, if you want to land on Mars, you got to use science to get there.
I don't
but
want
if
the
you
guy,
want to get the idea of going to Mars, you need the idealist sense. Go ahead.
I don't want the guy who's building bridges to be using the tarot to do it. You know what I mean?
But the guy who came up with the idea for a bridge probably did use the tarot to come up with that idea.
Right. You know, it's
obviously that's not true, but as a metaphor, it's true.
The right tool for the job.
Yep.
Oh, that reminds me of the other thing I wanted to clarify, which is that, so one of the things you hear occasionally, from you hear occasionally in terms to Western occultism, especially the spookier side, the darker side, is, well, if you guys are just trying to do Tantra, why don't you guys just go do Tantra? And it's because I didn't grow up in India.
Correct.
Right.
I want to interrupt for 1 second. For those people who say that, go look at fucking Tantra and tell me it resonates with you at all.
Exactly.
Like what's Shakti? You don't even fucking know. You have to live in that culture to really get it.
Right.
And even then, you might not. Just like there's Christians who go to church every fucking Sunday and don't know what half the Bible's really saying to them. But go on, Eddie. Sorry.
I can sit there in a tantric ritual and eat parched wheat or barley or whatever the hell it is until the cows come home. Right. And it is and intellectually understand why this is a big deal.
You can drink water through your nose.
Right. It is never going to have the same emotional impact on me that an upside down pentagram is going to have, because I was raised from this high to be afraid of that thing is bad and you shouldn't touch it.
Mm-hmm.
And so by me doing the Agordi thing and saying, well, no, nothing's bad or good. It's only how we use it or what we do with it. Right. God is in that too. It's that, and as much as people, this is the reason why armchair occultists who are kind of like those hardcore materialist skeptics, but they're good enough at math to be scientists. So they're kind of like those guys, right? That whatever part of their brain is responsible for understanding or being able to experience spiritual things just isn't there. It isn't working.
Too much fluoride around their pineal gland, according to some people.
Yeah. This is the reason that they hate working magicians so much, is because they're always on the outside looking in at it. And
envy's a bitch, isn't it? Envy is like one of the things that like fucks 99% of the population these days.
Is that, yes, as much as in chaos magic we like to say that belief is a tool, the way I like to put it is belief is the key to magic. You have to believe in it to get the engine running, but it's not the engine. The engine is your emotion. It's that gut level, and I'm not talking heart chakra emotion. I'm talking, down in your guts chakra emotion. It's that. So because as we learned from Jung, that's where the deepest archetypes live in our subconscious, is that they've been with us for so long that they might as well be hard coded into us.
Yep.
And when you are having those emotional gut level reactions, that's a sign that your subconscious at that level is engaging.
Yeah, I often say to people, I can tell if someone's really doing magic, sometimes just watching them. Actually, quite easily, actually. I can tell if they're doing real magic or if they're just going through motions very easily it's like with Bruce Lee, emotional content. Where is your, if I don't feel it, and I don't mean just like it made me cry, feel it, like you said. I don't mean heart shock. I mean, I've got to, and I don't mean I see the energy blasting from your hands. I mean, I watched a guy do, I think it was the Lester Bashing Ritual of Pentagram. And like the guy's like, and he's like, I'm like, oh, dude, I felt that, because it's like he wasn't just saying it and he wasn't just pantomiming. He wasn't just like, he was a method actor. He was like, whoosh, and he really shot something, right?
He sold it.
He sold it.
That's what they call it in acting. He sold it.
So this is why good magicians almost are always good drama majors too. Like there's always a connection there, or an artist. There's always a connection between a really good magician and some kind of artistry, poetry, writing, drawing, music, dance, whatever, some form of like it's always got charisma in it. Like real magic is a sorcerer, not a wizard. Just to put it bluntly, a wizard's like a scientist, whereas a sorcerer is will and sensual bang artistry. So
in theater, at least where I work,
don't forget the theater came from the old mystery schools. So
exactly, literally the very first unit in Theater 101 is who were the first actors? What was the first play? And everybody goes to Sophocles or whoever the fuck it is. And it's like, no, it was the Mysteries. And the first actors, the first performance artists, the first artists, period, were the priests. Now,
I'll take you 1,000 steps further and go, it's the shaman in the cave with the bone in his nose painting on the ceiling.
Because what you think those cave paintings are, those were not a newspaper. That's sigil magic.
Yeah, very much so. And it's beautiful for that fact. I love looking at cave paintings for that reason, because I know exactly where their brains were at when I look at those things.
Right. And I love using the cave paintings as an example of when somebody wants the $20 or the whatever it is, they think you should be able to just do a sigil and nothing else, and it should just show up. And yeah, sometimes it works that way, but you need to go out and do the thing too, because our ancient ancestors, who were the very first magicians, okay, do you think they sat there in that cave and they painted the picture of them shooting all the deer, and that's all they did? They just sat there and stared at the painting all night and then went out and tried to shoot a deer, which they couldn't have done because they didn't sharpen their fucking arrows.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. They took care of all the preparations first. They did.
This is why I prefer the word manifestation, because it takes the whole cause and effect equation out completely. Yeah. And it's rather a revelation. Okay. Magic is a form of revelation, not a form of cause and effect. Yeah. Now, people who are egoistically attached, like you said, those armchair fuckers in particular, they get pissed when you say that. I had a guy literally threaten to curse me and get mad because he's like, you're a fucking phony. Because which I've been saying since I started this whole fucking thing. I guess he missed the memo. He's like, you're such a fake Satanist. I'm like, I never said I was a Satanist, dickhead. It really pissed me off, because this is a guy who's followed me for years, and he got real uppity one day because I said magic doesn't work the way he thinks he does. My opinion, fair enough. You can disagree. I can back it up though. Can you? Because when I say what I'm saying, I can prove it to a degree. When you say my magic causes shit, okay, buddy, I want a diamond ring next week. No, I thought you said magic can cause shit. Okay, let me make it easy. I'll give you 10 years and you better not work for it. It better just materialize out of no. Oh, so then what do you mean? You mean magic still requires some mundane course of action? So you're saying it's revealed over time through mundane forces usually, and sometimes you get something that maybe breaks the laws of nature, but guess what? You can never prove that either, because it's always in that gray zone of we couldn't tell. So just relax on this. You're insane if you think that bibbity bobbity boo causes things to fly. Now I want to touch something you brought up earlier, and we talked about this like a week ago. And not you and me, but on another stream, is the concept of belief. This is another sign of like a total novice when they say to you, magic works by belief. When you say that, I know what you meant, and you clarified it. It made total sense. But some people will tell you, well, you've got to believe the thing. Now, there's a couple of problems with belief as the thing that causes shit or whatever. Belief is more of a block than it is an opener. Like, belief is more about blocking things because it's a form of the mind. The mind is why is the atomy the mind? Why is air the mind? Because it separates and surrounds. The knife, the atomy, cuts. That's what the mind does. The mind is a spotlight that separates things out and highlights them as important in this moment, and that's where your focus is. Okay? That's one reason why the atomy is great as a symbol for the mind. Now, what is belief? What is belief? Okay? Can you change your belief on purpose? Can I suddenly just say, I believe that the sky is brown? Well, I can say that.
Sort of.
I can parrot it, but I won't believe it. No. If you want me to believe something, I have to experience it. Show me. I'm from Missouri. Show me and I'll believe it. Demonstrate it. Prove it. Have me get gnosis of it. Then I'll believe it.
Now, this is important to point out, using belief as a tool in the correct way, that is a skill, and it is a skill that you can practice. And actually, there's an exercise, and I think it's one of Pete Carroll's books on this, which is he lays out sort of 5 simple paradigms, which is like atheism, polytheism, monotheism, and I don't know. But he lays out like 5 of them. And what he tells you to do is, okay, for like the first week, or so, right? And just repeat this over and over till you get it down. You know, on Monday, you're going to believe you're going to use this belief system as a tool. And what does he mean by that? So, well, I can say I believe it, but how do I just act as if it's true?
Mm-hmm. Fake it till you make it. It's the fake it till you make it principle.
Right. And once you get to the point where you can do that, you can switch every day. What he tells you to do is pull out a 6-sided die and every day roll the die. And if it comes up 1 through 5, you do that one. If it comes up 6, dealer's choice. Mm-hmm. And you keep doing that. And sometimes it can take years for you to get it down. But, you know, that is something that I'm able to do, which is that when this is, to me, one of the main primary importance of why I still do some form of a circle casting ritual before and after a formal opening and a formal closing to everything I do, is because that's the trigger.
Mm-hmm. It's a mnemonic device
to put me into that, because only because, again, same with the martial arts, I sat there and I had somebody take a swing at me 1,000 times until I finally, it's not happening here, it's happening here. That when he takes a swing at me, my arm comes up right way. You know?
Yeah. No, I that's
also because if you do get to the point where you're able to paradigm shift and use the emotional, like a lot of people talk about wanting to be able to do quote unquote real magic. Let's put ourselves back in that mindset, right? Of getting
Hollywood fantasy magic.
Yes. Like they want to be at the point where they could just do that without the sigil or without any of the trappings whatsoever. I'm like, the fuck you do? I'm like, wait, okay. So I want you to think about every random thought that goes through your head during the fucking day. Now imagine that every time that happens, it becomes real.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was kind of pointing at, was that belief doesn't cause anything. It's not a superpower. Mm-mm. If belief worked the way some of these people think it does, then you would never be surprised by anything in the world, because it would always be what you believe it to be. Mm-hmm. You don't believe your wife's cheating on you? Then she never will. Okay? The only reason that she would cheat on you then is because you believe that she was. So belief is not what causes anything to happen. Belief is a modality. Yeah. I prefer the word modality for belief. So belief is a form of modality. If you cannot enter that and use that modality, then you just can't do it.
Right.
Now you can learn to do it, like you were describing. Yeah. That's a different. So what you're describing, in my opinion, is not that you shift belief around. It's that you're able to change your modalities. That's a different thing, because belief is that you believe it works that way. But you can't suddenly, just because I told you to, like, Eddie, right now I want you to not believe that. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a hard time. The only way you're going to be able to do that is by faking it till you do get. Mm-hmm. So what you're really talking about, what I think Peter Carroll's really talking about, is the capacity for anybody to hold more than one idea at the same time.
Yes, exactly. What he's teaching you is the ability to take what he calls the psychic sensor, which is that part of your brain that when you're trying to do a magic ritual is going to be sitting there chattering at you going, this is stupid, this isn't going to work, to shut it up. That's all you're learning how to do. It's why I say belief is the key. It's the lock. It's the thing that turns the lock.
Right. And that's why I say it's more of a, I don't know, a wall or a gate.
It's a barrier. It's a block.
It's a barrier. Even when it's in your favor, it's a blinder. Yes. So if you say, I believe magic works, guess what? The whole world of magic doesn't work, just got cut off for you. So you just blinded yourself to the skeptic side of things.
Yep.
So you've got to be able to hold both in your mind. Now I do, and that gets me into trouble, because I tend to lead towards a little skepticism because I don't like to be fooled by liars.
Yes.
How many of you guys in the chat, I'm reading chat and stuff, and I see people reading stuff, and how many of you guys are really superstitious believers in some of this stuff? To the point where, I mean, you think you pissed off a spirit and you're cursed for life, or you think that if I do this just right, you're fucked because I just cursed you or something. How many of you guys live in that world? Well, that means the world of the rational skeptic is forever closed to you. Mm-hmm. And the rational skeptic is just as right as you are. And that's the ultimate, that's why I like the multiverse as a materialistic concept. I see it as the pleroma of the infinite. But we'll say from the materialistic side, it's a hyperspatial block time multiverse. That's the pleroma. That is the being, and it has no dimension because it's infinite. It's boundless.
That person who is the key is. Well, I mentioned this before we get past it. Is that being able to take that skeptical mindset is maybe the most effective form of defensive magic you will ever.
Didn't I just tell you that? I think I just told you that in a text last night, didn't I?
Was it? No, I don't think it was.
Because I was talking about the psychic parasite, and I gave you this whole, go back into Discord.
Yeah.
And I said that one of my techniques for defense, if I'm really getting throttled and fucked by whatever the fuck it is I tend to go hardcore skeptic for a while. I don't even know I'm doing it. It's like a defense mechanism to go, this ain't real. Fuck you. This doesn't work. This is nothing. So you may have noticed over the last 2 years in particular, 3 years in particular, that I've leaned into skepticism again a little bit. Why is that? Because, spoiler alert, I tried some shit and I think I got some blowback. Okay? No big deal. So I lean into the skepticism side because it allows me to go, and just will it away.
I call it bullshit banishing, which is you look at you point at it and you go, bullshit. And it suddenly ceases to exist.
Now, what's really happening is I'm shifting into, in my understanding, why I like the multiverse is because in the multiverse, you really can somewhere, probably, almost certainly, hurl fireballs out of your dick or wherever the fuck you want to shoot them from. But we, because of egoistic attachment, are here. The person that the divine loves, and so each one of you guys right now, the divine loves you and wants to watch you. Whatever this is that you are, that's what it wants. It's not that it doesn't love Eddie. It's just that right now the divine loves me exclusively. Not because I'm better, not for anything like that. It's just like sometimes you want to listen to Master of Puppets and sometimes you want to listen to Run DMC. It has nothing to do with this is better or worse. It is just, I'm here right now because I want to watch this. Now, because that is true, you as D.H. Thorne or Eddie can't decide to change that because you're just the puppet show going on. The divine has to say, I want to witness the universe where D.H. Thorne can hurl fireballs out of his dick. And until the divine, and again, want is a bad word, but we're just going to use it because it's colloquially correct. When the divine decides to envision that and be there, nothing will stop it. I will hurl fireballs out of my hand. But D.H. Thorne doesn't decide that. D.H. Thorne is just the show. So, somewhere in the multiverse, it does happen. Somewhere in the infinite, the most unimaginable things exist and are possible. But you're not going to go there so long as consciousness is completely fixated on this version of you. Because to imagine you did live in a universe where you could throw fireballs, unless you're the very first one to figure it out, for example, you're going to have a hard fucking time accepting it. Remember what we said about belief. It's more about what you don't believe than what you do. So because you don't believe it, from a mystical perspective, I'm saying, would you accept it if it happened? Wouldn't you look for an excuse of why that didn't really happen? How much you want to bet the first person who discovered static electricity in their finger thought it was magic? And it wasn't until however long ago that people realized that it was when you rub things, it's static electricity. It's not magic.
I thought you were going to say when you rub things, magic happens. And I'm just like, yes.
Well, there is that too. Yes, it is in the Bible. So how many of you guys realize that? Now, does that mean it wasn't magical lightning bolts? Here's the real fuck up kicker in the head is that somewhere in the multiverse, that is a lightning bolt that you can will into existence. It's not just because you rub shit. But for whatever reason, all of us that are talking here exist in a paradigm where that's you're rubbing shit and it's electrons being stripped off. And in another paradigm of reality, it's both. It's, you're rubbing this, but you can accentuate it with something and shoot it as a lightning bolt. Does that mean that it's a given that supernatural shit happens in the multiverse? No, but it's probably true, because the very laws of nature that we think are laws. Here's the other problem with materialism, by the way, as a tangential but also connected thing. Materialists think that the laws control the universe. They put the cart before the horse. The laws are what they observe the universe doing. They're a pattern. They're not actually laws. They're effectively laws because you can predict that, just like, for example, you can predict that if you flip a coin, 50% of the time it should come up one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean it always will? No, you could flip a coin 1 billion times and still be heads. And guess what? You might think that the next time, that because it came up heads 1 billion times, the next time has to be tails. And for the next 1 billion times, it has to be tails. No, it just means that every time you flip the coin, it could be either one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 50-50. It doesn't tell you what it's going to be. It tells you what it could be. So the laws of nature don't actually rule the universe. I hate when I run into, this is why I say, once again, scientists who are pure scientists make terrible philosophers, and good philosophers often make the best scientists, not because they necessarily do the math right, but because their brain is open in a way that the hard, skeptical, rational, material scientist can't. The hard, skeptic scientists, I guess the David, what's his name? David Hawkins, what's his name? You know, that guy who's like the enemy of all woo. I forget his name. He's the guy that everybody, you know, who's like a superstar for the skeptics. I can't think of his name. I think it's David Hawkins. He would tell you that the universe is ruled by laws. And then the question should be, where did those laws come from?
Mm-hmm. Well, the question should be, if you're telling me that the physical laws, which is a fundamental a priori assumption of all physics, that the fundamental laws of the universe apply exactly the same way everywhere all the time, show me your experiments that you performed in the next galaxy over.
And 10 billion years ago, and so on.
Right.
But we already know, we don't even have to do that, Eddie, because we already know, just by a priori, we know that the laws of physics didn't come into effect until a measurable period after the initial event of the Big Bang. So we know for a fact that, I forget which order they appeared in, but for a certain period, the laws of nature as we know them actually didn't exist. It wasn't just because we couldn't find them or detect them. We know that they didn't work that way. And we also know that the laws of nature are not objective rules. They're relationships to other things going on.
They're statistical abstractions.
So when we're talking about the weak or the strong force, we're talking about a relationship. We're not talking about an actual number. We'll say, what's the value of the weak force?
Nah.
Well, that number is an arbitrary relationship. It's not an actual real number. That's just a number in relationship to something else. It's like, what's the actual measurement of an inch based on? It's made up. It's a relationship. There is no such thing as an inch. It doesn't exist. There's no inch out there in space. This is an inch.
Your mom believes in my inch.
Hey, what's up, baby? Hi, Mom. But so natural laws precipitate from nature, not the other way around. And you got these people, I mean, I don't know, maybe you could, what's his name, you know, the guy who's kind of pissing me off lately, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Maybe Tyson would agree with me. Maybe he wouldn't. But it is presented to the public as such. So yeah, the hierophants of scientism may know better, but they don't teach better. They teach you, just like they teach you the Bohr model of atoms, which is absolute bullshit, is not what they look like, but that's the one you're given, and you're taught in school, even to this day, that that's what an atom looks like.
And do you know why that is still the one you're taught? Because it's the most useful.
Oh, it's the most useful, yeah.
Right.
It's a metaphor.
Yes, unless you're doing certain kinds of work, you don't need to be doing the quantum waveform calculations.
Fair,
right?
but do they tell the kids that? No. So by the same token, they dumb us all down with materialism, and I think the absolute highest hierophants know better. And I know this because when you take the rational skeptics and you have a conversation with them about what we're talking about, they're going to say it's all woo and bullshit, right? And they're going to say that they know it's woo and bullshit because when they do it, they can determine the natural cause that caused the coincidence to happen. So if I do a psi wheel and I put my hands around, it starts spinning, they're going to say, well, we know that that's happening because the heat off your hands causing rising convection currents, and that's causing it to spin. And when you put it in a under glass, it's more the electrostatic takes over, and that's why it spins. Mm-hmm. And they'll say we can measure all this, and that's how we know. Fair enough, okay? Fair enough. Let me give you a different example then. This one's a little bit better because that one it's not so clear about. Let me give you one that's even more clear where they're wrong. If I do a ritual tonight and I conjure whatever spirit that I want and I say, give me a sign that you're here, and I suddenly hear in the wall the sound of a thump, and I go, holy shit, there's my sign, the spirits are real. Then you get the team of crack scientists to come in. They're gonna, they had every kind of sensory device hooked up to that room, and immediately, because they got a thermal thing going, they can see the rat in the wall that bumped against like something and caused the thump. And they go, that wasn't a spirit, it was a rat. So you're wrong, spirits aren't real. Ha ha. So I would ask that person, before I prove the wrong, I would ask them a simple question. Where is your goalpost for this being real? If your goalpost is it has to break the laws of nature, then you're basically hitting me with a catch-22. You're hitting me with a double bind. Mm-hmm. You're saying it can't be something you understand, but it must still happen. Mm-hmm. It has to break the laws of nature to be real. Meaning it's not real by definition. As soon as it happens, it's real. Sorry. So they know, the people who set up this unanswerable question, we'll say, the people who set up this conundrum, they did it this way on purpose. I'm telling you, maybe not Neil Tyson, I don't think he knows this, but someone way back, someone who came up with this was like, you know what? Here's how we prove them wrong and fuck them all up. We get them to think that the only way it's real is if it breaks the laws of nature. Now, here's where it gets really funny. And I wrote this in Become the Maelstrom. I thought it was one of the best things I ever wrote in that book. And it was, even if you can prove why it happened, it still happened. It still happened when it happened, and it still meant something to you when it happened. That was the magic. That was the part that matters. It's not how it happened. That's what the materialist cares about. They want it to be something they can't prove or have to disprove or whatever. Ironically, they demand things be falsifiable, but the very thing that would prove magic has to be unfalsifiable for it to be real. It's a catch-22. If you understand how science works, and I'm not the greatest scientist, but if you understand just the philosophy of science in a nutshell, you know that when they present the whatchamacallit challenge for the $1 million to prove you're a psychic, they already know that the cards are stacked against you because their goalposts are going to move no matter how you prove it. So, for example, let's say I could bend a spoon with my mind. I think. Because I don't have things hooked to my head. I just know that when I hold the spoon and I go bend, the fucker bends. Well, maybe it's because electrochemical signals do something like an electric eel and it causes an electromagnetic pull and it bends because it's made of iron. And they're going to say, well, see, that wasn't magic. You're just a fluke. Right? You see what I'm saying? They're going to say that wasn't magic. You're just a mutant. You've got like an electric eel gene in you that caused you to be able to manipulate electromagnetism to bend a spoon. And they're going to strut around saying, see, magic doesn't work. You're just a freak. So what's magic then? Well, it's got to be something we can't, it has to be something unfalsifiable. So you're saying it can't be falsified. Exactly. Gotcha. So you're saying that it has to be something you can't prove either way for it to be magic, right? Okay. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. Okay. How about that entire catalog of shit you can't explain still? Mm-hmm. Is there not a giant well, we think we could explain it. We just don't have the eyes of God. So you admit there's a God or something? Like what? Where is your? So this is the madness. This is the mental illness of this Aristotelian. I always say Aristotelian. I shouldn't pick on Aristotle because he's actually quite brilliant. I don't mean to pick on. You know, I love that famous picture of Plato like this and Aristotle like this, because the truth is you got to take those two together and do that. That's it right there. You can't just be this one. You can't just be this one. You got to bring the two together. That's the above and the below have to be united. Otherwise, reality. So what they did was they separated the as above and so below and made you focus on just the so below. And that's why all of you, every single one of us, are really locked into a very materialistic paradigm right now, because they have successfully done that to you. Can say I'm not materialistic. Yeah, compared to that shaman of the tribe 10,000 years ago, yeah, you're real fucking I don't give a fuck how materialistic you think you're not, unless you're sitting there literally on the edge of the tribe, not giving a shit about anything, high off your ass on mushrooms all the time, talking to God every 5 minutes with a bow in your nose. You're still living in the world of material. Okay. And these people have really, and I'm not saying it's better to live in the other world. I'm just saying, I think you should live in both. I think you should have a foot in both worlds. I think you should be looking at the horizon, not up or down. You should have your eyes straight ahead into the ultimate truth is neither extreme. It's looking at the silver of the coin, not the heads or the tails. You got to be right on that edge. That's like when the coin flips and lands on its edge, bam, now you got it. If you're on the head side or the tail side, you don't got it yet. You're still in la la land. So that's what they want you to do. And someone had said, Ninurta, because he knows what's up. He says, D.H. Tyson's views are fractured with BS, 100% New World Order influence. You already know. Exactly. He's 100. Like I said, I saw him on a Joe Rogan podcast, and I'm like, look, Joe Rogan may be wrong, and maybe these machine elves aren't real. I've never experienced them. I've never tried. But when Tyson says like he won't touch this because it's hurting his brain, that tells me he's never disobjectified. He's never ever once meditated. He's never ever had his thoughts subsided. Never. He's still fully ego.
Right. Especially when actual scientists, will study that and be able to come up with proof that, no, this is really helping people.
Really helping people, not just sometimes. Really, to the point where it's criminal that they make it so illegal and so hard to have.
Yep.
Fine. You want to have social safety nets that say, okay, only at these approved locations with the people who can watch you and shit. I'm okay. Fine. Whatever. Let's institutionalize that civilian wise. I don't want the government to rule that, but no. I understand. You only want ayahuasca priests to do it because they're responsible. But okay. It's not that it's not dangerous. Of course it's dangerous. No. You're fucking with part of your brain here. Not everyone's supposed to do it.
No.
But to make it outlawed, it's not even just because you have a right to your body. It's actually twice criminal because it really does. And I know this even though I haven't done them, because my meditative trances, when compared to a psychedelic trip, I see the same shit, just less visceral. I have more mortal control over it, which is not necessarily a good thing. Like sometimes it's good to let go. I'm just saying I can see how it's the same thing. It's just, I would like to have that completely, balls to the wall, seatbelt off, falling out of an airplane trip. I would like to have that just because I want to compare it to what I can do through meditation. I'm sure it's more intense. Like I have no doubt, but I want to compare. Because that would tell me a lot. And I can't legally do that unless I go to $1,000 a pop ayahuasca retreat.
Right. And it's one of those things where I will admit publicly that I do engage in chemonosis every once in a while. But do you know why? It's not because, I can eat a certain number of a certain kind of candy and reach a mental state that is very conducive for doing magic, right? Or whatever. And can I get there without that? Absolutely. Have I gotten there without that? Absolutely. It takes 3 times as long. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where it's like the first time you're going to get there, you are it is useful as a shortcut, but it can quickly become a crutch.
A crutch, yes. And you got to watch out for that crutch. Yeah.
And the other mistake, a practical piece of advice on this is that when it comes to ketosis, less is a lot more. And the biggest mistake people make with it is a really good shortcut to achieving the mental state you need, because the hardest part about it is getting there the first time, right? Because once you're there, you can take a look around and go, okay, so this is what this feels like. I know how to get back here.
Like you have gnosis of the state that you're trying to have gnosis. Like you have gnosis of gnosis. Yeah.
Right. And that's when chemognosis is most useful. But the mistake people make
I like that
about
term.
it.
Where'd you get it from? Where'd you make it up? Like
chaos magic.
I may have to borrow it.
Yeah.
I like that term.
I think Pete Carroll came up with it.
Oh, damn it. Once again?
I know.
Is there anything new?
No, there's nothing new under the sun. I guarantee you that after our cave painting ancestors painted those deer on the wall, they jacked off on them just like chaos magicians do on Post-it notes.
Well, they did have the big titted sculpture in
Exactly.
the corner for Mama Earth, you know.
The only thing that's changed in the last 6,000 years or 12,000 years of human history is now we're having sex with stationery instead of sex with rocks to do our sigil magic.
Yeah, because, you know, and then the asshole came along, has also been there since the beginning too. So that hasn't even changed.
Exactly. So yeah, the biggest mistake people make is they take too much and they end up blowing right past the exit at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know, which there's nothing wrong with that too.
Look, I mean, like I said, the old school shaman, you know, in the cave was, I'm sure he had some self-control. I'm not saying he was just an addict sitting there being a complete asshole, but you know, there's a reason why they're beyond the pale in every culture. And beyond the pale means you're outside the fence of the town. There's a reason why they're the wild men, because they don't fit in civilized society, even a caveman society civilized, compared to where the deep, true magic gnosis comes from. You can't relate to civilized society very well if you're all the way off in La La Land all the time. It's really hard.
Right.
You know, it's better to think of yourself as a damn animal at that point, because you're never going to fit back into this civilization again. I don't, and I've only tiptoed outside the pale a little bit.
Exactly.
I haven't even. I don't fit. Like, I look at this world and I go, holy fuck, I am not meant for this much longer. Holy crap! Like, not that I'm not supposed, but it's just like, whoa, like. How's that meme go? You know, before I was born, I'm going to incarnate and help humanity through the Great Awakening. After incarnating about 30 years, fuck them, let them die. Like,
yep. That's why at a certain point, like, I vacillate between the fuck all y'all, I don't care, I'm just going to go sit in my cabin in the woods, and I am going to become the God Emperor of mankind and teach these people their grandchildren will never forget.
Yeah. Martin McGregor's asking who jerks off on sigils, and where does that come from? That comes from the idea that when you are in an orgasmic state, you are achieving a form of gnosis. You're really not, but you could, because you could say that ecstasy feeling if your mental state.
You're achieving a form of single pointed consciousness. Yeah,
like you're, and that is a gateway to gnosis. It's not gnosis, but it's very similar. Like when you hit like hard, like trance, you get like really woo. But the idea is that, like Eddie said, if you're going with the Osmond Spare school of thought, you're entering a state where your subconscious becomes enslaved to your conscious, which honestly is like one of the worst opinions I've ever heard, because it's always your subconscious inspiring the conscious anyway, if we're going with that psychological perspective, which I don't even think that is accurate. It's more accurate perhaps, but it's, so this idea that your left brain can tell your right brain what to do, that's like saying that the puppet can tell the hand what to do. It's not that the left brain has no control. It's just that its control is a veto vote. It's not the actual doer. Like, it's the executor and the veto. It's not the magician. Okay. The magician is the subconscious.
I prefer to think of it more in Carolian terms of, you're using single pointed consciousness, however you get there, to slip the sigil, which, never forget that a sigil is a statement of intent that has been symbolically encoded in language that the conscious mind cannot understand.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It all comes to that psychic sensor. You're using whatever it is, whether it's orgasm or drugs or getting punched in the face by a 6'2"
Sure.
from Philadelphia,
like literally any of those things can be used,
or exhaustion rituals, or whatever it is, whatever you are doing to shut down this little part of your brain right here that's saying, "This is stupid, this can't work." So that.
And by the way, if you're an experienced meditator, transcendental guy, all of that stuff, you don't need any of that. You can literally just whoop,
exactly,
and you're there. It's not hard.
It's not hard. But you've been there a couple of times. You don't need any of the bicycles to do it. It's just that certain states for certain other kinds of working I'm doing, especially when it's kind of an emotional thing where I'm going to have to drag.
When you're attached, when it's something you're like, oh, I'm going to lose my house if I don't get this magic to work. Yeah, that's when it's really hard. You do need help of some sort.
And I find it's more for the stuff like I was talking about earlier, where it's I got to go do some shadow work. It's I need something, and yes, I can do that any number of ways. It's just that, whether it's orgasm or drugs, cheminosis. I don't like to say drugs because most of them are just completely natural substances.
Yep. They're not synthetic, generally speaking, is I think what we're getting at. They may not be organic in the sense that we've crossbred some shit to make it really good, but it could have happened in nature without our help if things just grew next to each other long enough. So it's not like we broke nature to do this. Like when you have, like original aspirin, perfectly fine. The shit that you buy these days is like a billion different chemicals and some aspirin in it.
And to be clear, I'm not talking about any kind of hardcore shit here. I'm not going to talk about what I am talking about because we're on fucking YouTube.
Yeah, well, to a degree you can. I mean, there's whole channels dedicated to psychedelics that don't have any problem. Right. You'd have to have your disclaimers in place. That's all.
And also because I live in a state and I am where that is not legal, and I am prescribed certain pharmaceuticals that I'm not allowed to have in conjunction with that other stuff, even if it was legal here federally. So for legal reasons, someone who isn't me is the one doing this.
Plus you have a job where that could come back to bite you in the tit. So
not really.
No? Okay.
If that place ever started caring about that, they're going to lose a lot of fucking people.
I love the way you put that. Yeah. I mean, so I would also like to mention to Martin that there, especially from a left-hand perspective, a Vamchara perspective, a sinister perspective, there is an extra oomph you can get that love and lighters don't get, and that is going out of your comfort zone in terms of like the great icky, which would be jerking off on a sigil for you, perhaps. You might find that literally going to town on yourself and jerking off on a sigil might boost that shit into the stratosphere because you're so like, you have to, like, when it happens, you're like in a weird place.
It's the same thing I was talking about with the inverted pentagram for me, because I spent 4 years as a Christian. It's taboo. It's the fact that you're pushing your own boundaries.
You're breaking a taboo, and taboos are they're just, mortal ego trips that are externalized into right and wrong and morality bullshit. That doesn't mean that you should go out and fuck around with adrenochrome and all this other horrible shit that we hear about. It's that you have to recognize that if all is divine, then nothing is forbidden. And you get to decide. When I say you get to decide, I mean cosmic will, which is causing, I wouldn't even say causing. It is your cosmic will that your conscious attention is here now in this place, this body, this person, this thing. If it is your will, it will be done, whether you want it as an ego or not. If it is your will, it will be done. And sometimes what is done is completely against your taboos. But your will does get to choose what it's doing. No one's going to force you to jerk off on a sigil. No one's going to force you to do anything. Like, if I put a gun to your head, you still have a choice to do it or not. I can't take the will away from you. That's the real, there's nothing that I can do. Like, this is why, in a court of law, it's true, but in a philosophical sense, it's not. This whole idea, I was acting against my will. In a court of law, it flies because you can say, well, they threaten you and all this shit. But from a higher transcendental philosophical view, that's actually bullshit. It's always your will, no matter what. You know, it wasn't your ego's desire.
And it's really important to point out that, like you said earlier, the appropriate time to bring that up is not when somebody has just suffered a trauma. Because it starts to sound...
No, it's not at all what I'm trying to do. In fact, the idea of victim blaming is ridiculous to a non-dualist. It doesn't make any sense. It's not, and let's remind that even the non-dualist has compassion for all the other non-dual parts of themselves. So it's not a matter of, here's why I say to you that when and if I ever start my order, the morality of the order is very simple. It is agnostic about codified morality in the sense that we think it's all bullshit. But we also understand and have patience for the fact that when people become aware of their non-dual self, sincere compassion is an inevitable result. So in other words, when you live in ignorance, you do ignorant things. When you are aware that everything is the same divine being, your rationality changes. Your idea of not right and wrong, it doesn't become codified. It's more intuitive. When you've transcended, your sense of right and wrong is an intuitive thing, not, and I got news for you. You were born with that intuition. No one had to teach you that it's wrong to murder your best friend. Because you know intuitively, if I hit him and he goes, ow, that makes you feel bad. See, I don't want to do that. Now, yeah, some people are born without that gene. They don't have, you know, they're psychopaths and they don't have empathy. But I got news for you. Even they don't go around killing everything. Why is that? If they lack empathy, they're a psychopath. They still got something in there that they know. It's not just because society told them not to. Yeah, maybe they pull the wings off of butterflies. Maybe they don't feel the empathy of why that's wrong. But the reason that they feel anything for it is because a part of them is going, hey, you know, this is probably not the thing. This is probably, you're causing pain. And like, they know they're causing pain. It's not that they don't know that. So I guess what I'm getting at is, instead of a codified morality where this thing is right, this thing is wrong, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. Those are what you tell the animals that have not awakened yet, so that civilization works and people don't, like, this way you have a system of laws, you have some sense of control. But the enlightened masters don't need morality. Did Jesus have a code of ethics at all? Jesus had no code of ethics. He literally just had, let's assume he's real. Let's assume he's legit. Let's assume the Gnostic version of him is closer to the truth, or at least the Thomas version of him is closer to the truth, or the Book of Judas version is closer to the truth. Let's assume that's the true one, not the hard Catholic, Christian, whatever one. He had no system of law. He rebuked the law. He revolted against the law. He said it should be in you.
Bullet point number one.
It really was.
You don't need it. You don't need it. Not to say that everybody doesn't need it.
Yeah, it's not that the societies don't have to have a system of laws. Right.
Because Crowley, the one thing I will also give Crowley credit for is he understood this, which is that, you know, this is why he had two orders, you know, one he started and one he took over. And really three, if you count the EGC, which is part of the OTO. There's the order for the people like you and me, and I dare say the majority of people hopefully watching us, that want the ultimate mysteries, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's an organization that exists to help us with that, if in Crow's mind. Then there's another group of people who need something like the Golden Dawn, which is, or, you know, let's be honest, something like the Freemasons, which is, yeah, it's kind of about that, but really it's about getting together and having barbecues.
Well, there's also, that's the Porch Mason versus the inner, you know, higher than 32, or maybe even higher than 30. I don't think it goes higher than 33, but you get the point.
And the point isn't that the people in the AA are looking down on the people in the OTO. It's that where they are at in their journey, this is not what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you have the vast majority of people who just want to come to church on Sunday and have a simple set of rules and look, just do this and you're not going to have problems and you're not going to have as many problems in your life. If we just get everybody to act according to the same simple set of rules, everything would be fine.
Yep.
Because they don't care. They're a mechanic or they're
what I was going to say. It's the difference
care.
between the person. So I'm sure there's more degrees than this, but in computers, you got the end user who doesn't know shit. They just know how the operating system functions to use, and barely at that half the time. You got the programmer. That fucker knows a lot about how the programs work. But if you ask him how, to build a CPU out of nothing, obviously no one knows how to do that because it's too complicated, but you get my point. Then you got the guy who knows how to build the computers and build the parts. So there's all these different areas of focus that each person, again, through the initiatory process, goes through in their soul journey or their life journey or their quest for knowledge. And I know for a fact I began as the church on Sunday guy. Then I transitioned into the other thing. Now I'm here I am standing at the threshold of infinity, and I'm looking for a reason not to dive in all the way because I kind of like it here right now where I'm at, where it's a lucid dream, and I don't want to wake up forever. And I don't think you do wake up forever. So I'm just going to enjoy being asleep, but no, I'm sleeping, and that's where I'm at. And there's other people who are like, no, I'm diving off that board the minute it shows up and I'm not coming back. And those guys get to do it too. So there is, like you said, there's no right or wrong. I know I can get up on my high horse and be like, oh, y'all motherfuckers who are all about works are bullshit. And I do that because I've seen a different truth. I've seen a higher dimension. But guess what? The divine's incarnate in those guys too, and it's having the time of its life trying to prove magic is real, and I shouldn't fault them for it. It's just if you're seeking the absolute truth, that's not it.
And again, to use the role-playing game analogy, it's not that we're saying that the magic users are better than the clerics. It's just that the undifferentiated consciousness, when it decided to play this version of the game that is me sitting here right now, it decided to roll the magic user. When it decided to play, my buddy Mike that he went to high school with, it decided to roll a mechanic. That's it.
And let's not forget, if you're using the D&D analogy, no matter what class you're playing with, you're always playing with the platonic solids anyway.
Yep.
You're still dealing with the same elements. You're still dealing with the same ultimate river that's flowing.
And then if you really want to brain, think about the fact that at the table where all of our higher selves are sitting playing us as characters, that the higher self that is playing me as a character is that same undifferentiated consciousness playing a character that is playing me. And yours is your higher consciousness playing you as a character. And
this is why I said, as you go up, if we're going hierarchically speaking, which I think instead of thinking of it as there's reality layers, think of it more as there are dimensions of perception. On this material perception, it's this. You go a little bit higher, it's still personified. There's still a D.H. Thorne, there's still an Eddie, like a ghost, like an image of it. You go a little higher, then they become like an ideal version. Now, here's the problem with most people's understanding of ideal forms is when the average person thinks of an ideal form, they think of like the most perfect version of something. The problem with that is that's a very anthropocentric perspective. What is the most perfect version of a shoe? Well, to a horse, it's completely different than what it is for you, isn't it? So, and to some guy living, this is going to sound terrible, some guy living, in the hood, the perfect idea of a shoe's got a Nike swoosh on it and a such and so going on. For me, it's like a goth boot that I can also wear in a battle situation. For somebody else, it's something. So the ideal form of a shoe, most, we'll say neophytes, approach that as they picture. So that's where you get the idea of the gods and their gleaming chariots and shit, because you get this idea that they are the most beautiful or effective. Now, that doesn't mean that beauty doesn't have an ideal form. It doesn't mean that these things don't have ideal forms that exist. It's just that they're not the highestness. The highest ideal form is something that you have no material conception of. It doesn't look better than the other ones. It doesn't taste better. It is literally I would even go so far as to say, like, there's another school of thought that says it's the schematic from which things are built, but that's not what I mean. I refer again to that that analogy of a river with stones in it, and you get the white water over it. The ideal forms are the stones in the bottom of the river that you can't see or ever see that cause the river to undulate. That's the ideal form. What's the ideal form of a rapid? It's a rock at the bottom of the ocean. You get it? Mm-hmm. So I'm saying, to the audience, do you guys get it? Like when we're talking about ideal forms, so what is the ideal self above Thorne? Well, there's the Thorne that I think I am, like the ego, superego. Then there's like this perfect, synthesis and integrated being that I could be. And that's an ideal form that I'm moving towards, hopefully. One could use the astrological reference and say, you're born as this and your north node tells you what your ideal form is. So I was born, ironically, a hardcore fire sign as an Aries, and I'm supposed to become a Libra according to my north node. That's a lot of spaces I got to jump over to get there. Like that's like going from I'm a killer to a doctor. Like, that's tough, dude. So I got a lot of journey to go through, and most of you guys probably do, but some people, it's not so big a leap. Okay, so I got to cover a big, compare a Libra to an Aries. I'm not saying they're night and day, but that's not an easy journey. Like that's going from I use my fists, my anger, my force, my will to I think about it, I feel it, I rationalize it, all the things that Libras do. So what is that telling you? Well, that actually means that D.H. Thorne's ideal form is not Aries. It's actually a Libra, because that's what I am going towards. That is what I'm being refined into, is a Libra. Using the astrological symbolism, I'm saying. I'm not saying literally that's the truth. I'm saying just to put it in a language maybe some of you would understand best. So I began as this Aries ideal, and I'm becoming the Libra ideal. Which one's more ideal for me? Neither one. It's just I'm becoming that one. And I got to tell you, each one of us none of us are a single ideal or a single. This is why there is some elementalism that should be at play here. There's different schools of thought about ideal forms. Some people say the elements become the archetypes. Other people say the archetypes manifest as the elements. You can play with that all you want in your head. I prefer to think of it as you'll never know. I prefer to land on the it's a mystery square and leave it at that, because the more you intellectualize it as machinery or as a language or a mathematical relationship, that actually pigeonholes you into something that may not even be true. And even if it was, you end up getting stuck there. I'd rather have the open-ended, it could be anything, that you can't understand it, because then you have the opportunity to explore the multiverse with it, rather than it can only be. So for example, let's say that there are people who, for example, would try to apply the same astrology to people living in another solar system. How would that fucking work? But there are people who would, because they believe that those houses and planets are a universal truth to everything, because they still live in a very Earth-centric mentality. But if I did move to Alpha Centauri, would astrology work the same way? No, not in specific. In extension, yes. Like what Eddie said before, the starting condition of that solar system is resonant or correspondent to your starting position, and so therefore that which made you, and you're in relationship, so you can predict things. That part may be true in both solar systems, but when Pandora goes retrograde, circling Alpha Centauri B or whatever, it may mean something completely different than when Jupiter goes retrograde.
Hell, you know what? I'm going to send Bill this email. I'm going to send Bill Duvendak this email, because I guarantee you he hasn't written this book yet. How's my chart going to work when I live on Mars?
Ooh, and Bill would probably be a good person to attempt to make such a transition and figure out what that actually means, because then you got to go with Earth/Gaia and what that represents. And oof, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm down with that swirl. Let's do it. So I just looked at the time, and it it is getting, I mean, for me, it's getting a little ridiculous.
I'm getting gassed anyway, and I got work tomorrow. So
yeah, we're kind of circular thinking here. So yeah, guys, I want everyone to give Eddie a round of applause for having the giant cojones to come on here and risk crying in front of a bunch of strangers for your benefit, so that you can see his gnosis and see his shadow work in action and hopefully gain something from it. There's probably people who, I got to tell you, Eddie, not a lot of people listening to that conversation about praying to the higher self, so to speak, and transcending would get that at all. They're going to think it's some dumb ritual that they do and somehow magic pops out at the end and they get a goodie out of it. But that was, unfortunately, I don't want to say, because it's almost tooting my own horn. I wouldn't even classify that as like top level shit, but that is definitely, I think if I was going to create a system, that would be somewhere in the middle of your journey, should be an experience you should have. It's definitely, it's definitely not neophyte territory, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's, you know, master of the temple territory. I would say it's strongly initiated adept territory. Like if you can do Shadownomicon, you can try to attempt what we just described. And you might even get it before that. I'm just saying before that, you might not get what you're doing and it might be difficult, but watch that stuff. And especially if you join late, go through that stuff, you know, and really meditate on the earlier part of this conversation in particular, especially when we were talking about that, you know, talking to God thing. And actually Atropa probably knows my chart better than I do. Was it? I thought Libra was my North Node. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my ascendant. Yeah, you might be right. I thought rising sign is how people perceive you, right? And North Node is what you're becoming, right? So if my North Node, let me check. I can look this up in 3. I could swear it was Libra. I could swear. Maybe Virgo's worse. Hold on. Why is this not working? There it is. Yeah, North Node Libra, right? And ascending is what people... Let me just double check this shit. Now you're making me feel stupid. Yeah, North Node is where you're going. And ascending is how people see you, right?
So your mom really is my North Node, like I said in the chat.
Oh, Eddie. Now I will curse you for reasons that shall remain apparent only to you. Yeah, rising
now
sign.
It's officially a stream.
Now it's Senate. Oh, come on, what is it? Just trying to remember. I am not an astrologer, by the way. I just dabble in it. Yeah, it represents the way others see you. So people see me as a Virgo for some weird ass reason. I got that a few times. You're like, oh, you're a Virgo. Like, no. I'm not even sure why you'd think so, but okay. But because Pluto's in my first house, I'm like a Pluto Virgo. So it's like a little extra weird. Like I'm a dark Virgo. But no, my North Node is Libra. That is what I'm becoming. And right now, Atropa's probably like, I must kill Thorne. Let me see what she's saying. She's probably, I love Atropa, dude. She's one of my favorite people in our fucking chat all the time. Let's see. Yay for Eddie. He's a great guest because he's very intelligent. Open. Oh, thank you, Atropa.
Thank you.
Yeah. Your mom is my North Node. Oh my God, Eddie. Anyway, so she says ascendant. I don't know. I'll have to chat with Atropa more on that on the side in another way, but I've always understood it a certain way. So maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Don't matter to me because I don't really, the way I consider astrology is it's not what's gonna happen. It's just the pattern that things follow a little bit. So like I use the analogy of when you're driving down the road and there's a sign that says slippery when wet or, you know, slow 20 sharp turn. It doesn't mean you're going to fly off the road. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be slippery. It just means that tap the brakes going around that turn because there's a tendency, the river bends that way coming up and it may not capsize you. It may. So when you see Mercury retrograde, people go, oh, that means communication's going to fail and stuff. I mean, as a meme, it's true, but not the reality. The reality of it is that's when you should be communicating within yourself. That's when it should be, the hidden communications is what people don't take seriously, the unseen. They don't realize when Mercury's in retrograde, the shit that you don't realize you're saying is still being recognized. So the subtext is more important under Mercury retrograde. It's not that you say the wrong things. It's that your mouth's moving, but your body's speaking kind of thing. That's what it really means. So anyway, yeah. I feel like I'm doing that thing now. So, where was I? All right, good. So let's thank Eddie once again for being here. Thank you, Eddie. Yay!
Thank you all.
I don't know what next week's show will be all about, but we should be here. I don't really have any other announcements. Just visit the links in the description to find places to buy my crap. If you want to buy my books, you can. Although, they're no longer the state of the art of Thorne's mysticism. They are now level 1. They are now the entry point. They are no longer the goal.
Become the Maelstrom for dummies.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. I'm working on the next book title. I don't know. I don't want to give it away, but it will probably be that motto that I speak of all the time. All is divine, nothing is forbidden. That is probably the title of my next book. So I probably just jinxed myself by telling you that. Hopefully that will not change, but let's see where it goes. It will be probably the spiritual successor to Maelstrom, and I hope it will be better in every way, but I don't know. What are you going to do? Reinvent the wheel again?
At the very least, it'll be 800 pages long at this point.
I mean, it should be, but it would be 800 pages of me saying the same thing in different ways 1,000 times, trying to find the most articulate way to say the unarticulatable. And, luckily I rounded the bend and found Neoplatonism again and took a different dive into it, and it clicked, but I clicked in a way where I'm like, this is great, but you're wrong. And not for the reasons people will think. So it's more of a case of, I have this knack for doing, I don't know where I heard it from. I don't know if it's a real word. I don't know if there's a better word for it, but I invert things. So when I'm on a train, right, the perception is if you sit on the train long enough and forget that you're on a train, the world's going by, but really you're the one moving. Einstein's relativity was an inversion of what we presume. So in other words, it's taking what you what your assumptions are and inverting them and finding the truth that way. Because Einstein realized that instead of the ways he was doing things, he had to invert what things were moving to the point where he realized when you jump out of an airplane, you're not falling to the earth is rushing up to hit you. And that sounds insane, but that is literally what all the math and all of the things are saying. So by inverting that, suddenly relativity and special relativity and all that shit was born, and it worked better than Newtonian. Newtonian says you're falling out of the plane. Einstein says the earth is rising up to hit you. And guess who is a better model? Not Newton, Einstein. So he inverted the assumption. I do that all the time. I invert assumptions. So when I don't know what Plotinus thought, because and all these guys thought really, because the translations are through the lens of modern academia, unfortunately. So when they use words, they use them in modern context. I don't know what they really meant by emanationism back in the day. Maybe they meant it more like what I'm saying, because what I'm seeing, I prefer the word manifestationism rather than emanationism. Instead of seeing it as a hierarchy of realities, it is paradigms of perception. So down here in the material, it's not really down here. It's just, this is what materiality looks like from this embodied state. Higher isn't really higher. It's not even more true. It's just, it's a different wavelength until you get to the center and they're all the same wavelength. You realize that there is no higher or lower. It's not even a circle. You never left. You've been in Oz the whole time. All right, guys, I'm ranting. Eddie, give us the goodbye. I'm going to make you do it.
The magic was inside you all along.
But where?
In your butt.
In what?
In your butt. Magic is stored in the butt.